Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Montgomery County Council work session for July 28. We are now in our afternoon session. We're going to start with agenda item 4. It's a public hearing and action on a resolution to approve special appropriation number 27-2 to the FY27 capital budget in amendment to the FY27-32 Capital Improvements Program, Montgomery County Government, Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions, FiberNet, for $4.2 million. Source of funds, federal aid. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. There are not registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Now for the action on this item, is there a motion to approve Special Appropriation 27-2? Moved by Council President, Vice President Marilyn Balcom. Second by Council Member Lori Sells. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes by everyone present. Item 5 is a public hearing in action on a resolution to approve supplemental appropriation 27-4 to the FY27 operating budget, Montgomery County Public Schools, Maryland Grow Your Own Educators Grant for $6.6 million. Source of funds, state grant. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. There are not registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Now we're going to move on to the action portion of this item. Is there a motion to approve supplemental appropriation 27-4? Moved by Councilmember Lori Sells, second by Councilmember Katz. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's approved by everyone present. Agenda item 6 is a public hearing in action on a resolution to approve special appropriation 27-5 to the FY27 operating budget, Montgomery County Government, Department of Health and Human Services, State of Maryland Community Health Resources Commission for $12 million. Source of funds, state grant. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. There are no registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Now we will move on the action portion of this item. Is there a motion to approve special appropriation 27-5? Moved by Councilmember Lori Sells, second by Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes by everyone present. Agenda item 7 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve supplemental appropriation 27-1 to the FY27 operating budget, Montgomery County Government, Department of Health and Human Services, Youth, Vaping and Nicotine Addiction Response for $390,000, General Fund, HHS Restricted Other, Source of Funds. That's settlement. A Health and Human Services Committee work session is scheduled for September 17, 2026. Those wishing to submit materials for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business on September 10, 2026. As a reminder of a public hearing testimony, guidelines, your comments must be limited to issues relevant to the public hearing topic for which you are testifying and are appropriate for a public meeting. You will hear a tone when your time is up, and I appreciate everyone abiding by their allotted time. We have one registered speaker, is Mr. Dave Kennedy. Sir, if you can please come forward, and you may sit anywhere in front of me. And turn on your mic. And please state your name right on top. Go ahead.
Name is David Kennedy. So first of all, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to come and speak. I'm very familiar with a number of you guys and appreciate your service. After serving over 29 plus years in fire and rescue for this county and 4 years military service for this country, my service continues with our business that we have at Rackmove Fitness and Boxing in President Gonzalez's district, with the sole purpose of reaching out to the youth. We all know that we have problems with the youth today. I think a lot of us understand it's a lack of things for them to do, constructive. And myself personally, I think that COVID kind of exacerbated the problems with the youth being locked in and don't have that interaction with other youth, other peers. So with this in mind, our program at the gym, the Youth Empowerment Program, is to not only help them physically and mentally, but provide mentorship, because a lot of, especially our young men, are missing those male role models. What I wanted to create is a safe, community-oriented space where the kids come and they feel heard and they feel safe, which helps them be more productive in school and at home. And even for the parents to feel safe, like they can express what's going on in the house with their kids. And we've created that. We're a small gym. My wife, who's with me, and one of my coaches, and my 80-year-old mother works there. I don't think she'll get mad because I tell her. I say that because I celebrate her. So we offer things like workshops when we're talking about Juul and vaping and nicotine and things like that. We also have workshops on fentanyl, which is personal to us because my wife and I lost our son 2 years ago before our first drug prevention workshop, 3 days prior to fentanyl, accidental fentanyl overdose, that my own unit, Montgomery County Fire and Rescue, ran. So this is personal to us. So I value and understand each one of your positions when it comes to being an elected official and the things you have prioritized and need to, and the lens in which you look through, but also know our lens in which we have to look through things, and that's for our members and those kids in our program. And that's our sole focus, and that will only be our focus. The help we get is through our members. I had an 11-year-old that gave me $10 and said, "Coach, this is to help us." So I appreciate your time, and everybody have a good day and be safe.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for all the work you do. This public hearing is now closed. The council will now sit as the district council for agenda item 8. The first item for the district council's consideration is the introduction zoning text amendment 26-11, temporary uses benefit performance. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Lukie. A public hearing scheduled for September 15, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. I'm going to turn it to the lead sponsor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Colleagues, I've worked with community organizations and nonprofits who have had approval of their positive community serving events put in jeopardy because of the onerous and I believe fairly unique requirements in our current benefit performance zoning to obtain permission from 75% of occupants of neighboring properties within 600 feet. Often these events last for 3 or 4 hours only, like a civic association awards ceremony program, or since we've got it coming up in a week, National Night Out. I simply don't believe these types of events pose the type of a threat or create the potential impacts that necessitate the very high burden of getting permission from neighboring properties. This ZTA is a much more reasonable balance to make sure we're still having these positive events. They get the licenses for that. They will run at certain times of the day. And this would require that those longer duration benefit performances that are outside of the scope of what I was initially describing, because those could be for multiple days or a few weeks, that those longer duration benefit performances will notify neighbors within 600 feet that the events will be occurring. It also requires Department of Permitting Services for every benefit performance to notify our public safety agencies so that Fire, police, and our Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security are aware that a larger event may be taking place at a specific location. It doesn't require deployment of their resources, but it's a heads up, which is a right and responsible thing to do so that they know there are extra people who will be gathering in a particular place and space that they are not maybe regularly doing, which may impact their operations that day, or good for officers and fire rescue personnel to be aware of. It is also my understanding that that type of a notification typically already happens, but we'd like to codify it to make sure it's consistent across the board. So I look forward to discussing this, and I want to thank you, Council President.
Thank you. I want to turn to council staff. Is there anything else to add?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And give me 1 second because this froze. Okay, no, we're good. And with that, this zoning text amendment is introduced. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move to action on zoning text amendment 26-05, expedited approval plan job creation project. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee recommends enactment with amendments. Before I turn it to the chair, let me just say that this is my ZTA, and I appreciate the work from the committee and everybody who has contributed to this ZTA, particularly the Planning Department and the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. With that, I'm going to turn it to the chair of PHP.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate your leadership on this as Council President and Chair of the Econ Committee, and appreciate this effort, which builds on some of the previous work that we've done with Accelerate MoCo and some of the other efforts, and really took quite a bit of time during committee and had a thoughtful conversation and navigated through how we work through making the goal of this ZTA move forward vis-a-vis the Economic Development Strategic Plan, which we're receiving a draft of imminently, and other efforts that are ongoing. Zoning text 2605, expedited approval plan job creation project, was introduced on March 10th by the Council President with co-sponsors. I think everybody, actually. I was going to list everyone's name, but I think I just counted everybody. And a public hearing was held on my birthday, actually. I don't think that's right. This is a job creation incentive building on previous efforts to reduce costs of establishing business in the county by expediting the regulatory process. It renames Signature Business Headquarters to Job Creation Projects and expands the eligibility requirements by allowing the use in additional commercial residential zones, employment zones, and industrial zones. ZTA lowers the number of required employees from the 20,000 number, which was put forward to make a bid for the Amazon project, to a more reasonable but not insignificant 200 jobs, removes the requirement that it will be a headquarters or primary place of business, requires the business to be identified as a strategic industry sector in the current Economic Development Strategic Plan, and has county or state funding incentives or 200 employees on site, and provides additional enforcement provisions. We took up a number of amendments and ultimately, I think, landed in a very good place to try to find those balances, including listing out our current strategic industries, but allowing for a bridge to get to the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and making sure that we're including the home runs here in economic development, not the singles and doubles, so to speak, but to make sure that we weren't holding out just for a singular project, but we're opening up for business for all kinds of projects. So with that, let me turn it over to Ms. Nadeau. She can walk us through the packet, and appreciate the work of colleagues for their thoughtful efforts.
Thank you. You are correct. The public hearing, it should say June 9th, so it was not your
I was going to say
birthday.
January 9th, it would be
Apologies.
before it was even put forward.
I think we're still in recess then.
Yeah.
So.
I read that and thought, missed that.
So the committee recommendations begin on page 4. The chair summarized them very well, so I will run through them pretty quickly here. First, the committee agreed to recommend including multi-tenant buildings, since the county does not generate many single-use commercial buildings, and the committee clarified that that would mean at least one tenant in the building would meet the qualifications, does not have to be every tenant. The lengthy discussion that was referenced is Amendment 2 at the top of page 5. So the committee voted on an amendment that would narrow the applicability by requiring 200 employees regardless of any other criteria, but still maintain an or. So the way this would work is you'd have the 200 employees, and then you could meet any of the 3 criteria, which are being in specific listed industries, receiving county or state funding or incentives, or being in the upcoming economic development strategic plan. So 1, 2, or 3 of those, as long as you meet the employee requirement. And related to that, the committee recommended changing 200 new employees to 200 net new jobs to provide clarity on the goal here, which is creating more jobs, but not penalizing people who've worked in the county before. And then lastly, the committee agreed to an amendment to add DPS as a department that should receive proof that a company has complied with the requirements, since DPS enforces our zoning code. And those are the amendments addressed by the committee, and then I believe there are council member amendments as well, so I will pause.
I'm going to take it from here. And again, thank you so much to the committee, and I think we end up in a great spot. And I appreciate having planning, MMC, EDC available to reach to this stage. And other amendments, so I'm going to turn it back to you and then to the lead of the amendments to explain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Appreciate you introducing this, not only as President, but as Chair of the Economic Development Committee, and appreciate the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee for going through it and their due diligence. I have before us 3 different amendments, and we'll take them one by one. The first amendment I'd like to introduce expands the industries which would capture this allowance. The industries listed are strong industries that we already do well in, but I think it would behoove us to expand that to other emerging industries. And as was noted by the chair of the PHP committee, we will, in very short order, be getting the Economic Development MCEDC's roadmap, where I think these things should marry. So the first amendment I'd like to introduce would expand the sectors to include the financial services industry, which is a mature industry, the aerospace and satellite industry as well, and then also the clean energy and research industry, which is something that we hope to be doing more of because the climate demands it. But that is the first amendment that I would like to introduce.
We have a motion on this amendment by Councilmember Glass. I would just say that I will not support just because I think it's repetitive. And when you say financial services, that's a huge industry. Includes banks, accountants, and so forth. And the point was to be very strategic. I'm looking for a second for his amendment. Hearing none, we're going to move on to the second one.
Okay. I'm introducing all these amendments because I believe the point of the ZTA was to create more jobs, and I'm introducing amendments that would capture more industries to show that we're open to all of these industries. Second amendment is employee threshold. Appreciate starting at a high level a few years ago for Amazon, bringing that down to 200, which is manageable. But as I think all of us know, the most number of workers in Montgomery County work in small businesses, which are 50 and fewer employees. And I believe the best growth and best investment to grow our local economy and grow our jobs is by helping those medium-sized businesses grow into larger scale businesses. And in order to do that, the 200 threshold might seem too high. And so I'm introducing an amendment to bring the target from 200 employees new to 100, which would then help incentivize and encourage our mid-sized businesses, the vast majority of businesses in Montgomery County, and help them strive to become larger businesses and bring more jobs to the community. That's my second amendment, to bring from 200 threshold down to 100.
Thank you for the amendment, which I will not support. I just want to make sure people understand that to get to the 200, and actually, first I was thinking 500 and 300, and then we landed at 200. Besides the significant amount of time that the committee spent to discuss the amount of jobs. Remember, the original was 20,000. The back and forth that I had with planning specifically, and you're right there, so I had to mention you guys, to ensure that it will be a number that they could feel comfortable with the amount of applications that are hopefully are gonna come in. It will be a great problem to have. It was a negotiation to reach that 200 number, and I strongly encourage people to please support the PHP committee with this negotiation that we had. So I felt I had to say that. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second for the motion? Hearing none, we're gonna move on to the third one.
Okay, hopefully this is a little easier. The third amendment is to expand the types of funding opportunities that would allow a business to utilize this ZTA. According to the ZTA, the business would need to have either a local or a state grant, and I'm introducing an amendment to expand that to include federal grants or federal types of funding. Namely, one example is the CHIPS and Science Act. Billions and billions of dollars to help support technological advancement here at home in the United States. We are the third largest life science biotech community. If a business wants to expand, wants to bring more jobs for some of this emerging technology and has a funding from the federal government, I think that would be a welcome occurrence. And so I'd like to introduce this amendment to include federal funding as one of the key considerations.
Thank you for that amendment. This is also another issue that was discussed as we were crafting this ZTA. The issue is that county, state, or federal, there's so many companies in this area that get federal grants, so the pool will be larger. And it may sound great, but I think in the compromise that we had with the folks that I have been dealing with was to ensure that the pool will be reasonable. And if it's in a future, we say, okay, maybe we can handle this well and we can perhaps include those who are getting federal grants, we'll do so. But right now, we really need to be very strategic, and we just want to focus with the state and the county. Otherwise, it's going to get out of control. So with that, I'm personally going to vote no for that amendment. So we have an amendment on the floor. Is there a second?
Well, Madam President, if I can just say, from your lips to God's ears, I hope this goes out of control, and I hope that there are a lot more companies that vie for this. Okay, I yield back.
I appreciate your work, though. Thank you. Is there anything else from council staff?
Nothing else from council staff. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we have a recommendation from the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Lutke?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
And it passes unanimously. Thank you so much for everybody involved. Yay. Okay, moving on. So, C, action on zoning text amendment 26-08, non-conforming use reinstatement. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee recommends enactment with amendments. Chair Friedson is the lead sponsor. Would you please share the committee's report?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to Ms. Nadeau and Mr. Sartori, Mr. Berber, Ms. Saccone, and everyone else who was involved in this. Hopefully today's conversation will be much shorter than the conversation to actually draft this thing. But appreciate it. Zoning text amendment 2608 will allow for the reinstatement of a non-conforming use under certain conditions. It was introduced on April 28th. The public hearing was held on June 16th. The non-conforming use is a use that was allowed when established but no longer conforms to the requirement of the zone in which it is located. Under the current zoning ordinance, a nonconforming use is considered abandoned if it ceases operation for at least 6 months. ZTA 2608 will allow the reinstatement of a nonconforming use that has been abandoned for less than 5 years. In order to reinstate nonconforming use, the ZTA will require approval by the hearing examiner with the opportunity for a hearing if objections are raised. DPS and planning will be required to submit information to the hearing examiner to assist in the decision-making, including whether reinstatement conflicts with the relevant master plan and information about the prior use. The hearing examiner may approve reinstatement of the nonconforming use if reinstatement would not change the nature, character, or intensity of the prior use. Minimal changes will be allowed for compatibility. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee recommends approval with a minor amendment proposed by council staff, which just added the word non-conforming twice in Part D. It really doesn't change anything but clarifies what was assumed, but in the zoning code, we don't assume anything, so we added the word just to be safe with a little bit of belts and suspenders. And I want to thank colleagues for their thoughtful work on this, and again, thank the hearing examiner and council staff and planning for all of your hard work. Happy to turn it over to Ms. Nadeau to follow up on anything that I miss.
Nothing missed, so nothing to add. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. And with that, we have a recommendation from the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, can you please roll the vote?
Councilmember Lutke.
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink.
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales.
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass.
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz.
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando. Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
And it passes by full council. Congratulations. We're going to move on with the next action is sectional map amendment H-162, Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan. I'm going to turn it, actually, no, we can, is there anything from staff that they want to add or the chair of PHP? No, nothing to add?
No, I would just state that you held a public hearing last week. There were no speakers for that public hearing. There was submitted written testimony that was in support of the zoning that was approved and adopted by this council as part of the master plan. This is just more an administrative step we take to put the zoning on the map following the master plan.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that explanation. Is there a motion to approve sectional map amendment H-162 Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan? Moved by Council Vice President Balcom, second by Council Member Lori Ann Sells. This is a roll call vote. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Lutke.
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink.
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales.
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass. Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz.
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando. Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
And it's approved. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on with last item for the district council's consideration is action on zoning text amendment 26-01 commercial uses data center. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee recommends enactment with amendments. As you all know, this has been led by Council Vice President Balcom, Councilmember Lori Ann Sells, and myself. I'm going to turn it to the chair of the committee, Friedson.
Thank you, Madam President. I thought the room was going to clear because everybody was here for the sectional map amendment, but turns out they're here for data centers. The zoning text amendment 2601 came before the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. As originally introduced, it would have defined data centers as a new use subject to certain zoning requirements. It would have specified the zones where data centers could be sited, establish minimum standards for the location of data centers in the county, and generally amend the law regarding permissible locations and conditions for data centers. There was a public hearing that was held on February 24th, and the committee took this up in earnest in recent days, actually, just last week. There have been numerous conversations among council members, environmental advocates, industry representatives, central staff, and residents over the last several months. And ultimately, the committee, by taking up the amendments by the sponsors, adopted a number of amendments at the recent work session and voted 3-0 to recommend enactment of the zoning text amendment, with amendments that would define large load data centers, preclude the data centers from locating anywhere within the county at this current time, and clarify that the ZTA applies to any application that has not yet received a building permit by the Department of Permitting Services. The data center definition, as amended in the ZTA approved by the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, would be defined as a building or group of buildings which has or is projected to have an aggregate monthly electricity demand of at least 25 megawatts used to house computer or network systems, computer storage equipment, or computer servers to store, manage, process, and transmit digital data. Data center includes associated infrastructure such as backup and on-site operational power generation, fuel storage, electromechanical energy storage, electrical substations and distribution, central cooling, and heat dissipation facilities. Data center does not include a facility used primarily for manufacturing, quantum computing research, biomedical research, or medical care. Data center does not include an institution of higher education approved to operate in Maryland by the Maryland Higher Education Commission. That is the definition and the scope around the definition and the prohibition now in the zoning code, if approved. Based on that definition, there was a lot of work that went in to that definition by the sponsors ultimately, and that is what is before us today. There's the next part of that was taken up by the Econ Committee with the moratorium, which is related with the same definition, but ultimately through the ZTA, that is what is before us currently, and I'm happy to turn it over to Ms. Wellens for any additional details.
Thank you, Madam President. The chair was very thorough. I don't have anything to add, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the members of the PHP committee. We have a recommendation by the committee. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Lutke?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans? Yes. Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
Thank you. The ZTA is approved, and the very important issue about it is the definition, which we're going to go over during the moratorium, which is next. So stay tuned. Before we move on to the legislative session, I'm going to turn it to Council Member Jawando for a quick announcement.
Yes, if I could just be recorded as voting in the affirmative for items 4, 5, and 6. Thank you, Madam President.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now we are going to call on bills for final reading. The first bill is Expedited Bill 19-26, Buildings, Moratoriums on Permits for Data Centers Established. The Economic Development Committee recommends enactment with amendments. I'm the chair of that committee, so I'll continue here. It has taken a lot of work to where we are today. There is one amendment that we need to do to this particular bill, and it's basically adding the definition that this council just approved on a definition of a data center and include it on the moratorium. Why? Those need to be in sync. They need to look exactly the same. The other issue that I want to add is, remember, we have two different bills, one led by Councilmember Glass, another one led by Councilmember Jawando. And what we did was personally merge them. And we compromised, and we went from 6 months to 2 years, and the compromise was 18 months. And I think, and it took a lot of work, not just by the Economic Development Committee, and I will also mention the PHP Committee, but everybody who's sitting in this place. Every single council member was very active, wanting to understand the significance of having data centers in our county, and understanding that that we need more information, especially from the state. The state is doing an impact study on data centers, and we look forward to that study. We also have the Office of Legislative Oversight is also doing a study. So we'll take our time to ensure that we're going to be drafting in the future a zoning text amendment that speaks on the realities of our communities, that really embraces our values to protect the environment and also to protect people who live and work and love this county. I have two people. I have the lead I have the two leads of the bill. So I'm going to turn it to them to make some comments, and then we're going to turn it back to staff so we can deal with the amendment on the definition. So I'm going to start with Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, last year, as more residents were coming to us asking questions about what was happening, many of us spoke to each other and wanted to answer that question ourselves. And we are in a very different place now than we were just months ago. And I do want to applaud the Council President and all of my colleagues for working through very tough, difficult situations, asking each other and members of the community and business community a lot of different questions. Because I think 7 months ago now, there were probably 11 different opinions as to how to proceed on data centers. And as was evident just moments ago, we unanimously supported a zoning text amendment that put very strict parameters and defined what data centers are and are tying it to an 18-month pause. Nothing will happen until we answer all the questions our community deserves. There are a lot of questions about what happens to the water in the Potomac River, what happens to our utility bill ratepayers, and what happens to the community as a whole. It is my hope that over the next 18 months, we have some very serious and earnest dialogue with all of our stakeholders to answer these questions, because I don't believe that the council, I don't believe that Rockville as a government agency or entity can answer those questions on our own. It is why I have pushed and continue to wish that we had a task force so that we could publicly engage in this conversation. But that is not the will of the body. But I am pleased with where the will has landed. And it is on calling data centers what they are and pausing them for 18 months. And so I appreciate the council leadership, appreciate my colleagues, because we have to get this right. And what we're doing today is one step towards that. So thank you, Madam President.
And thank you for all your work too. Next, Councilmember Wojo-Wando.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to start with thanks. Thanks first to the community. I think we've received, I'm going to guess, thousands of emails from residents around these issues, around my bill and around Councilmember Glass's bill, asking, and the testimony was very clear several weeks ago, that you all wanted to see a meaningful moratorium so that we can go through the tough issues: noise, water usage, the Potomac River. One that I've been really pushing hard on, and I'll mention every time, tax rates. There was a time when data centers received tax incentives to come. Now we want to make sure, because of the energy usage, that there's adequate public benefit in addition to protecting our community. And we need to work with the state and with this body to make sure that that happens. I want to thank the county executive for giving us that initial 6-month pause to give a little air and space for the council to come to this unanimous agreement, what I expect to be unanimous agreement today. And I just want to be clear that this moratorium is for 18 months. We're not going to just be twiddling our thumbs. We're going to work together, both on this council and the next, and to come up and engage the community in meaningful conversation around what we do and don't want to see. We write the rules. I've always said we don't want to be first, we want to be right. We have to get this right, because once you build it, you can't put the water back. You can't undo the utility bill cost. And so that's why this is really, really important. So there will be a robust process. I want to thank my colleagues on the Econ Committee for the alignment. I'm really happy that we're at a place where we're saying together this is where we are, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and can do the continued work. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you also for all your work. I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Don Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President. And I am grateful that everyone has been talking through these issues. They are complex issues. And I was grateful that the initial ZTA got started, and then we have the new one, and we're working through these things. And I totally understand why we had to have the new ZTA that we just voted on previously, and also why we're at this place with the moratorium. You know, I have concerns that I think are important for the public to know, which is, like, we already have data centers here. And I do think it's important to say that, because we are not going to do things that shut existing data centers down, right? We also do need to deal with the very legitimate environmental concerns about these hyperscale data centers, so that we do not come into situations that other jurisdictions have had, where they have grown and mushroomed and blossomed out of control without those guardrails. And I'm glad that my colleagues have already said we're going to work hard on this over the next 18 months during this moratorium. That's incredibly important. The fact that we had already data centers existing in Montgomery County but had no definition of a data center in our code was a big problem. And so we do need to make sure we pay careful attention to that, and to making sure we are placing guardrails and responsible requirements on things moving forward, so that we are caring for Montgomery County of the future. So I understand why we are doing what we are doing today. I hope we are not going to let any grass grow under our feet, and that we are going to continue working full steam ahead to work through these complex issues in concert with what the state is doing and studying, and that we take that all to heart as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I turn it to staff to go over the definition that we need to add here, I want to formally thank once again to the county executive, Mark Elrich, for his partnership. He's been working with us for a long time. People have no idea, for, I don't know, at least last year. And I truly thank him for that partnership, and I'm pretty sure that I speak on everybody who has touched on our regional ZTA, that I think I'm sure that we will continue working with him in the next council, if he gets elected to the county council, if he comes back, and if we all get reelected. I'm sure that we're going to continue working together to make sure that we get it right. With that, I'm going to turn it to council staff to make that change on the definition, please.
Thank you, Council President. I also just wanted to go back and discuss that the Econ Committee did make 3 amendments, and just so for procedural process, also amended just to remove the classification that was regarded to cable communication system. There was also an amendment that clarified and specifically stated that the conditional use application applied before or after the effective date of this bill, or if it's pending a regulatory review, or if the application is approved but a building permit has not been issued. All of those categories are still subject to this moratorium. In addition, as discussed, this also amends the bill from moving it from the 6 months to an actual 18-month moratorium. And then the final issue today, which has also been discussed, and Councilmember Friedson earlier read the definition into the record, which I think may be sufficient, but the purpose also is to adopt and align with that. And this would give the council the opportunity to be able to still deliberate a regulatory framework for large data centers, but more specifically to make sure that the county code now has a codified definition and that aligns with what's also in our zoning ordinance as well. So the definition, it sets a wattage threshold. It specifies the type of equipment housed within a building. It provides certain exclusion, and it precludes data centers from being located anywhere in the county. With that, on page 2 of your staff report is the definition that would amend lines 6 through 12 of the original bill.
And again, this is the definition that we already voted on under the ZTA, so without objection, we adopt the definition. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, so just the motion here on the definition.
Okay, you want the motion. Moved by Council Vice President Belcom, second by Councilmember Wojo-Wando. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passed unanimously. Is there anything else?
No.
No. Well, thank you so much for all your work as well, and to the community for being such great allies too. With that, I need a motion for this expedited bill 1926 as amended today. Moved by Council Vice President Balcom, second by Councilmember Lori Ann Sells. This is a roll call. Madam Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Lutke.
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink.
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales.
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass. Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz.
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando. Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
And the moratorium for 18 months for the data centers passes by full council. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to move on. For the next item for action is Bill 12-26, Finance Payments to Service Providers for Persons with Developmental Disabilities. The Health and Human Services Committee recommends enactment. I'm going to turn it to the chair of the committee, Councilmember Sells.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you. As Chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, I'm proud to support Bill 1226. Our direct care workers and service provider organizations are the backbone of Montgomery County's healthcare safety net. Day in and day out, they provide essential, life-enriching support to thousands of our residents with developmental disabilities. Bill 1226 ensures that our local funding and payment frameworks for developmental disability service providers remain timely, predictable, and aligned with the critical services they deliver. When we invest in our community partners, our workforce, we invest in equity, dignity, and a higher quality of life for all residents. I want to thank the Health and Human Services Committee members and advocates for their collaborative work on this vital legislation and strongly urge my colleagues to vote yes on Bill 1226. And I'll turn things over to Ms. Wellens for more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As the chair explained, this bill would update practices which is important for the updating the developmental disability supplement and how it's calculated. Currently, under current law, there is a requirement for the Health and Human Services to make a requirement to the council on a yearly basis for the amount of the supplement, and it's based upon some metrics which are outdated. So this bill will bring up the code into alignment with current practices. Support the the process in that manner. And as the chair mentioned, the committee looked through this thoroughly and made the recommendation to the full council to enact the bill as introduced. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a recommendation by the HHS committee. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Lutke.
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink.
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales.
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass. Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz.
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando.
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
And the bill passes. Thank you so much for all your work. We're going to move on to the final bill for action. Is Expedited Bill 31-26, Bond Authorization, Viva White Oak Development District. A joint Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee recommends enactment with amendments alongside with the Economic Development Committee. I'm going to turn it to Chair Stewart to please share the joint committee's recommendation.
Great, thank you very much. Last week, the GO and Econ committees met to review Bill 31-26, which is a bond authorization for the Vida White Oak Development District, and recommended passage with amendments. For background, in February of this year, the council created by resolution the Viva White Oak Development District, as we've been talking about it. This is a TIF, a tax increment financing for economic development. The bill that we reviewed and we're recommending to full council for enactment authorizes the county to issue and sell special obligation bonds in an amount sufficient to fund all or a portion of the cost of certain projects and improvement in the Viva White Oak Development District. The aggregate principal amount of the bonds would not exceed $420 million, and the bonds would be special obligations of the county and do not constitute general obligations of the county or pledge of the county's full faith and credit. The amendment that we discussed and passed in committee and the joint committees clarifies and requires that the county executive seek and obtain the approval of the council by resolution prior to the issuance of bonds that would bring the cumulative debt under the bill's authorization above both $220 million and $320 million. The joint committees expressed support and excitement for moving forward with this project. And this amendment, bless you, specifically was to make sure that we were following through with the council's commitment on this project as was discussed when we passed the resolution in the winter. I want to thank Councilmember Mink, whose district this is, and Mr. Ogorzalek for all of his work. And just let everyone know that the amendment we had to do is a good example of some of the things that we actually do need to change in how we do TIFs here. And so the Government Operations Committee will be having a session on this in September to review our processes on these agreements moving forward. But for purposes of today, the joint committees unanimously recommended passage of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it to staff. Is there anything else that needs to be added?
No, nothing to add. Everything's set forth in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. And with that, we have recommendation from the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee and the Economic Development Committee session. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Lutke.
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink.
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales.
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass.
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz.
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans votes yes. Councilmember Jawando. Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes.
And this bond authorization passes with full council. Thank you so much for your work. We're going to move on to agenda item 10. It's bill for introductions. The first bill is Bill 33-26, Cable Communications, Community Media Organizations, Requirements. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Kate Stewart. The co-sponsors are Councilmembers Balcom, Katz, and Evans. The public hearing is scheduled for September 15, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. I'm going to turn it to the lead sponsor before we let the staff to speak.
Thank you very much, Council President. First, to kind of recap how we got here, as many folks know, the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee for the last few years has been reviewing our cable funds and how we provide funding to our different community media organizations. And we had an excellent report in 2023 from our Office of Legislative Oversight. And last year's budget, our FY27 budget, we had a resolution that asked the county executive to submit to the county council's a Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee a strategic plan that will frame the FY 2027 budget allocations from the cable fund. The reason we requested this and need this is because we have seen over the last few years, as people kind of cut the cord, less and less in our cable fund, and we need to be thinking about how we are providing fundings to these organizations. We did receive a strategic plan or a draft of one in February 2026, but the committee had a number of unanswered questions, and so as we were going through the budget this year, the council decided to maintain the current funding structure that we have, and to continue working on the future and how we are funding this work. I want to thank MCM and the other stakeholders for working collaboratively on this. And as we are working on this governance structure moving forward and thinking about this next iteration, we took a look at what is required under our community media organizations contracts and decided that we would take this opportunity to update those what is required. And so this bill really basically just updates the community and media governance structure, and it makes it brings it into the same structure as we have with other similar organizations we have in the county. And so what does that mean? The bill would require a community media organization that contracts with the county to adopt a racial equity and social justice statement. The second thing is it would require a community media organization that contracts with the county to include members nominated by the county council and county executive on the organization's board of directors. And it would require a community media organization that contracts with the county to follow certain standards of public ethics and public access. And I do want to specifically thank Jasmine White, who's the CEO of MCM, who's here today, for working in collaboration on these issues, and Ms. Wellens for her work on this as well. And that is the bill.
Thank you. Is there anything else from staff to add? No? Seeing none, I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. With that, this bill is introduced. So thank you for your work. Next for introduction is Bill 38-26, Discriminatory Housing Practices and Early Lease Termination Amendments. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Menk. The co-sponsors are Councilmembers Stewarts and Yawondo. Public hearing is scheduled for September 15, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. I'm going to turn it to the lead sponsor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill is a straightforward update to our fair housing laws to ensure that discrimination based on immigration status is prohibited. These are protections that many people may assume already exist in Montgomery County, but as I have seen in constituent cases and heard from conversations with the executive branch and even from employees of a nonprofit partner while in conversation on a point in time count, this is one area of our county code where we do still need an adjustment. In my office, we've had a constituent who was pressured by their landlord to show documentation status or risk eviction. We have had residents required to prove their documentation status in order to even apply for a lease. This is unacceptable, and we need to make sure that we codify that. We also have and continue to receive numerous cases of families facing tremendous economic burdens because a loved one is being held in detention or has been deported and they're unable to pay the rent. And while incarceration is in our code as a permitted reason for early termination of a lease, detention and deportation are not. So this bill would add citizenship or immigration status to the list of categories in which discrimination in the sale or rental of housing is prohibited, and add detention or deportation due to immigration enforcement to the list of categories in which early termination of a residential lease is permitted. Thank you to Ana Martinez on my staff for her work on this, to Ms. McCartney Green for working through this with us, to CASA for their help and input in drafting, and MoCo IRC for their support as well. And thank you to Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Jawando for signing on as co-sponsors.
Thank you. Is there anything else? No? I'm going to start with Councilmember Shebra Evans.
I wanted to ask to be added as a co-sponsor. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Don Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilmember Mink, for your leadership on this, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. Councilmember Lori Sells.
Yes, thank you to the lead sponsor. I too would like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and to Councilmember Mink for your work in this. And this bill is introduced. Next is item 11. It's a work session action, amendments to the Comprehensive Water Supply and Sewerage Systems Plan, Water and Sewer Category Change Requests. Chair Glass, would you please chair the T&E Committee recommendation?
Okay, colleagues, we got water sewer policy. I know, it's between us and the Summer Fellows program. So appreciate DEP coming on up. And appreciate my colleagues on the T&E committee. Water sewer policy is always a fascinating puzzle to put together. So many different moving parts, literally and figuratively. But I appreciate my colleagues and we got through 4 of them, which are before us now. The first item is WSCCR 26-TRV05A, and that's 1272 Piney Meeting House Road in Potomac. The T&E committee recommends deferral of this change because there are a number of other properties that would also likely be interested, and so we're waiting for other decisions to be made down the road, and then we would circle back to that. Second request is 21820 Clarksburg Road in Boyds. The T&E committee again recommends a deferral pending potential policy revisions that will come up before the council as part of the upcoming comprehensive 10-year plan. So take that back up at a later point. The third request is from the Spencerville Seventh-day Adventist Church. The T&E committee recommends approval of that. And then the fourth and last request is at 6112 Muncaster Mill Road, and the T&E committee recommends denial of that request. Those are the 4 readouts, and I yield back, Madam President.
Thank you for that committee report. I'm going to turn it to staff for anything that was missing and anything that the full council needs to go through.
Sure. Just to clarify, the council is expecting to get a comprehensive update to the plan from the executive this fall. So that does put the council in a position where items can be deferred if they think the 10-year update might have an impact. And that affected a couple of the requests here. The Piney Meeting House Road one, for instance. There is a neighboring property also that was deferred by the council, and that issue has to play out. But that property and the subject property here could also be impacted by the 10-year plan update. So that was the rationale for the deferral on the first one. The 21820 Clarksburg Road, Boyds, the assisted living facility request. Similar issue there. The 10-year plan update could impact that. The council in the last update did approve a commercial sewer service policy that would have applied in this type of case, but the Maryland Department of the Environment did not approve that. They asked the council, or they asked DEP and the council to do more research on that, so that issue likely could come back up as part of the comprehensive update this time around. So that's the reason for those deferrals. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, as Councilmember Glass mentioned, there was universal support for approval of this request. The property actually has several different zoned parts on the site, so the approval applies to where the building footprint would be so that they could move forward with their redevelopment. But it looks like a private institutional facility case, a PIF case, but it's actually not. It's consistent with existing plans based on planning department staff's review. So we're able to move forward under that approach as opposed to going through a full PIF process. And then the last request, as mentioned, was recommended for denial since there was not an applicable policy in this case that could be applied, and there were not unique circumstances as there were in the others where we thought perhaps there would be a reason for deferral. So that one is recommended for denial.
Thank you for that. This brings me back to my days on the planning board because we got to vote on all of this. Is there anything that the executive team would like to add? Otherwise, I don't see anybody wanting to speak. Otherwise, we're going to move on with the T&E recommendation as stated. No? Beautiful. Okay. I ask. So we have a recommendation from the Transportation and Environment Committee. Those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passed unanimously. Thank you so much for your time and for all your work. We are going to move on to the very exciting item for today. It was not the data centers. It was not the trash talk this morning either. It's actually the Summer Fellows program. We're going to have their final presentations today, and this is our 4th year for this council to see these presentations, way longer for those who have been here for 3 terms or 2 terms, and for Council Member Shebra Evans is her first time, but it's actually pretty insightful, all the work that our fellows and ideas that they come up with. And I don't think they understand how valuable they are. And so I'm just paying some time so they can sit down. And so these are definitely our future leaders. So thank you so much for all your work. And I'm gonna also thank Ms. Dawn and Abender, Rodriguez Hernandez, and Mr. Mia for taking the time to organize and coach, lots of coaching to this group. And with that, I'm going to turn it to council staff to take it away.
Thank you so much, Madam Council President. The coordinator team here on Central Staff would like to thank the entire council staff for sharing their time and expertise, as well as the council for sharing their time with our summer fellows. We would also like to especially thank our partner departments who hosted summer fellows. So we'd like to thank the Fire and Rescue Service, the Police Department, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Recreation, and the Department of Environmental Protection. I'd like to especially apologize to DEP. I listed Ms. Yockel as a fellow with a different department, but she was placed with DEP this summer, so really appreciate everybody's time. And we will go ahead and begin with our summer fellow presentations. We structured our presentation. Each fellow will present on their independent research project for about 5 minutes. We'll have a first panel of 4 fellows, after which we'll pause for questions from council members for any or all of our 4 fellows. Then we'll have a second panel, each of four fellows presenting for 5 minutes again. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Cabrera for our first presentation.
Good afternoon, Council, and thank you, Mr. Anbinder, for that introduction. My name is Stacy, and this summer I worked with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue in the Community Risk Reduction section. So we know that communities with high social vulnerability often face greater risk exposure, and this includes fewer resources to respond to and recover from emergencies. Key indicators that drive high social vulnerability often include factors such as economic hardship, age, such as our very elderly and young populations, immigration status, limited access to healthcare, and housing conditions, such as overcrowded housing, for example. Given this high social vulnerability, the community risk reduction section was created in 2017, and in 2019, it was realigned to the Office of the Fire Chief to reflect the department's commitment towards preventative education before an emergency occurs. So my first research question asks, how do emergency incident rates vary across neighborhoods with different levels of social vulnerability? So after conducting some preliminary data analysis, I found that among the top 6 fire stations with the highest incident counts, 5 of 6 of those stations serve census tracts that are classified as highly socially vulnerable. So clearly there is a trend that these communities, these social vulnerable communities, are facing an increased emergency demand. However, it's also important to note that there are possibly many more factors that influence this relationship. When we see the impact of legislation over time, we see that there have been significant fire safety reduction across the years, alongside an introduction of important legislation that has been enacted and passed along the way, such as sprinkler requirements, carbon monoxide alarms, smoke alarms that have been passed along the way. However, recent years have seen an uptick in residential fire deaths, pointing to the importance of community risk reduction efforts. So given that topic about community risk reduction, I wanted to highlight to what extent these programs are currently reaching these populations among our social vulnerable communities. So I wanted to highlight some important initiatives that Fire and Rescue currently work on, including several educational initiatives and community programs. For example, they partner with American Red Cross, going door to door into communities to ensure that smoke alarms are installed correctly and functioning properly. One I wanted to focus on today is bystander CPR. So this means where was bystander CPR administered at the incident, yes or no? So we see that among low social vulnerable areas, so less vulnerable areas, we see commonly high bystander CPR rates. On the other hand, low bystander CPR rates are seen among both low and high social vulnerable areas, such as North Bethesda or Montgomery Village. However, it's less common to see tracks among highly social vulnerable areas that are high in CPR rates, pointing to the need for community risk reduction efforts among several communities, whether it's low or highly socially vulnerable. So my last question asks, what strategies can Montgomery County implement to improve equitable access to emergency resources? So after conducting my research, I examined several jurisdictions across the country and in places like Canada that currently use several strategies. For example, Oxnard, California has an emergency resource map where they identify cooling centers, shelters, evacuation routes. This is a public-facing map that residents can use as a daily tool. Toronto has a Community Partners on the Wellbeing Index. They identify specific community organizations that welcome in residents during an emergency. And Miami-Dade County has a coalition of faith-based organizations, nonprofits, and county agencies that partner together that can be used as a resource for residents. So with that, some of my initial recommendations to the council are to first amend the executive regulation, which outlines that landlords submit an emergency safety plan to DPS. Currently, there is no specific language within that regulation that outlines landlords submit multilingual evacuation instructions. And this would help align with Executive Order 4610, which states that individuals with limited English proficiency should have equitable access to government services. Second, directing Montgomery County Fire and Rescue and the Office of Emergency Management to lead the creation of a public-facing emergency map could help bolster support among the community to ensure they can accessibly access resources. And then finally, establishing something like a community preparedness ambassador network where we are leveraging community risk reduction strategies within the local community and local partners that communities trust could also ensure that everyone is well equipped to respond to an emergency. thank you. And I wanted to thank coordinators, the council members, and also Fire and Rescue for hosting me, several of which are here today. Thank you.
Emma, if you can turn on your mic. There you go. Thank you.
Hello. Yes. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Emma Davis. I am an MPA graduate student at Columbia University, and I'm excited to talk to you all today about impact of the arts in Montgomery County. My project was inspired by the 2025 OLO report on county arts funding, which found from fiscal year 2018 to 2025, the county has invested over $9.7 million into arts organizations. And from that, I really want to look into how the county evaluates the impact of and the outcomes from this investment. The primary tool for assessing county-wide economic impact data is the American for the Arts and Economic Prosperity Survey. It can provide really broad economic indicators such as local spending or local tax generation. Additionally, there is grant evaluation and self-evaluation from individual county-owned organizations, as well as one-off surveys and research initiatives recently done, for instance, for the Cultural Plan. I conducted several interviews with the Arts and Humanities, OLO, and also did site visits and interviews with Glen Echo and Strathmore to really better understand on-the-ground challenges and pain points of data collection, of impact collection, and I also researched national best practices to understand what the world is doing in regards to arts impact evaluation. From this work, I came up with 5 key findings. My first finding is that the art sector truly does deliver both economic and social value to Montgomery County. And while economic value is really easy to point to in a quantitative manner, social impact can be much more difficult to spot, even though there's a clear association with increasing quality of life or public safety or innovation, to name a few. Additionally, Montgomery County truly does support its system, primarily through funding. For instance, funding the Arts and Humanities Council through the NDA or allocating budget for public art. Thirdly, through my research, I really delved deep into the Arts and Economic Prosperity Survey and found that even though it is a fantastic tool, very useful and cost-effective, there are some severe limitations. Primarily, it focuses on economic impact. Additionally, nonprofits' arts and culture participation has fallen significantly from near 100% participation to less than half in recent years. And also this data collected only happens every half decade, and so data can become stagnant. Additionally, it doesn't include all the funding that the county pours in. For instance, an individual artist who might receive a grant from the Arts and Humanities Council isn't included in this model, and so this isn't the perfect model. And my fourth finding is that there's a really big shift away from just economic indicators and economic impact into more equity-oriented arts evaluation. We can see this in places like the National Endowment for the Arts, which has a four multi-domain framework, or cities like New York City. And so this is a great opportunity to focus into beyond economic impact. Finally, I found that Montgomery County lacks a standardized evaluation framework. So data collection does really happen across many different organizations. It's very complicated, yes, I know, and funding streams, but it doesn't always flow back up to the county in a consistent way, leading to impact being lost, impact, for instance, for an individual artist or an individual community member, and that's inevitable, but also a great opportunity. And it makes it difficult for the council to fully understand the outcomes of its investments and the big picture of the arts sector. And so, for example, there are county-owned arts venues that self-collect data that did not report to the most recent AEP 6 survey. And so, because this is how the Arts and Humanities Council shows economic impact and explains economic impact during budget discussions, this data doesn't fully capture all the impact. And so there's sort of impact left on the table. So from these findings, I have 4 recommendations. The first is to establish a arts evaluation framework. This can help the county identify which indicators, both economic and social or equity focused, it wants to prioritize and then track consistently. My second recommendation coincides with the proposed 10-year cultural plan, which is to integrate impact evaluation cycles into the cultural plan. My third recommendation is to strengthen data collection where possible, and especially focusing beyond economic impact. My fourth recommendation is finally to create a public-facing arts impact dashboard. This is a great opportunity to show to the county all the work that Montgomery County already does, and explain how important the arts is to the community. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Travis Henderson. I am a policy fellow that my department was Montgomery County Police Department. Today I'll be sharing you a few insights of my policy research, strategic briefing, focusing on strengthening and expanding MCPD's community outreach portfolio. And so to the direct outreach of Montgomery County Police Department, I was looking into a CED, or the Community Engagement Division, as well as the Community Resource Bureau, CRB, and I'll touch on that in later slides. But the county mandates that requiring proactive outreach and disaggregating demographic reporting is essential to racial equity and social justice, or RESJ. The IACP Trust Building Pledge is a national commitment for police departments across the country to institutionalize community trust. In this briefing, I'll talk about and walk you through the empirical audit that I've discovered, as well as key coverage gaps that allowed me to benchmark solutions and resource roadmaps for the council. And so this is just a little bit of what I was referring to earlier. So an empirical audit, a gap assessment, these two would just be able to see the capabilities for the outreach, not just on a near-term basis, but on a larger scale, as well as a resource roadmap. So looking at the numbers, so between 2022 and 2024, CED logged that outreach fell from 42%, so 541, to 313, and this is for the amount of events that they had within the 2 years, largely due to operational reallocations. A large part of this was the staffing context. So the MCPD is operating on a roughly one sworn officer per 1,000 residents in the county, compared to national average of 2.1. And while fully staffing is stabilized patrol, outreach cannot be paused, currently or anytime in the future due to the safety concerns. And the safety perception, the public survey data shows that residents' perception dropped to 84%. To 68%, and this direct link to reduction in visible positive community presence. And a large part of this is the language and demographic barriers. So the county has a lack for non-English speaking communities such as Amharic, Mandarin, French, and Vietnamese, as well as the senior population. This is the Victim Services Unit will be a proactive defense against elder scams and domestic violence resources that need significant expansion. I think we all know that not a lot of our senior citizens have adequate resource or access to social media, so bridging that gap for them might help as well. And having two-way engagement, so it's not just on the police department's effort to build that connection for community engagement, but also for the residents in the county. So targeting expansion. I have 5, and so embedding civilian liaisons to intake centers. I looked at the Dallas model and saw that they had a 34% increase in victim connections. This is funded by the DOJ COPS and VACA grants. Having multilingual ambassadors, training and stipend for trusted bilingual leaders via CASA, as well as looking at the Denver and Minneapolis. They did the same thing, and they saw a 200% increase in non-English reached throughout their communities. I'm having senior safety workshops, again, bi-monthly fraud and cybercrime workshops based on the National Triad Framework, as well as the community networks and digital strategy. Faith advisory councils, the NYPD model is the one I looked at. They use the decentralized district social media accounts for localizing youth engagement. And so I have a 3-phase recommendation. So the first phase is 1 to 6 months. It's, again, establishing the faith business community applying for those federal grants to be able to support a lot of the efforts that I see would be beneficial, as well as drafting district social media guidelines for the community as well. Phase 2 would be this is medium reach, so launch a multilingual community, have ambassadors, again supported through CASA and identity, as well as rolling out senior safety workshops in regional centers across the county, including libraries. And phase 3 would be the long term, so fully deploying victim service liaisons and being able to publish the RESJ disaggregated outreach impact report to support those findings and build the numbers over time. And so again, some of the summaries: endorsing outreach roadmaps, authorizing federal grants for the county, and improving partner allocations to better support the community as a whole. And thank you. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the council for meeting with us for those lunch sessions. It really meant a lot to me. I want to thank the program coordinators. I also want to thank my grandma. She's here to support me as well. So I thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. My name is Emma Jones, and I'm a Master of Public Policy student at Harvard. I'm excited to be here today talking to you about my project, which focused on evaluating and enhancing the Economic Development Fund. So first, I just wanted to provide a quick refresher on the Economic Development Fund. It's a $4 million annual operating budget and also received a $20 million infusion of funding in 2024 under the Jobs Initiative. I don't have time today to go over each program individually, so instead I think it's helpful to consider how each program works towards and promotes the county's overall economic development goals. On the bottom left, you can see 3 programs that are focused largely on expanding workforce opportunities in the county. These are programs that are generally focused on business attraction and retention, as well as job creation. The next 3 programs are primarily focused on developing priority sectors. These programs are focused largely in the innovation and biotech spaces. And finally, the last 2 programs are primarily focused on expanding access to capital for communities that have historically lacked access to capital. With that brief refresher, I wanted to dive into my findings. I looked at evaluating return on investment from the fund, and my 2 principal findings are that there is really a lack of outcome data that hinders the county's ability to evaluate return on investment and impact from the fund. Furthermore, the data collection that does exist is pretty inconsistent, which limits the county's ability to conduct comparative analyses across programs. To kind of illustrate this point, I have this table. I worked with the finance department to do a data inventory, and as you can see, the data is pretty inconsistent across programs. Furthermore, outcome data is outcome data that would enable the county to kind of understand each program's impact in terms of economic development is limited. And these are actually the more data-rich programs. You can see that the next 5 programs have even more consistent data and even more limited outcome data. The third finding that I wanted to highlight here today is that the county really cannot evaluate but for questions. And by that, I mean, what would have happened if the county had not provided the incentive? Perhaps the business still would have created a job or still have moved to the county. And these questions are really difficult to answer, even for academic researchers that have spent their entire careers trying to better understand business decision making. Moving on from these findings, I'm going to transition into talking about my 19 recommendations and in terms of how the county could enhance return on investment from the Economic Development Fund. I don't have time to go over each of these recommendations here today, so I think it's helpful to think of these recommendations in terms of 3 strategic approaches that the council could take today. The first kind of category of recommendations or strategic approach would be quicker operational fixes. These are things like adopting a grants management system that would enable the county to kind of administer the programs in a more cohesive fashion. These recommendations under the strategic approach are generally higher in terms of operational and political feasibility, but maybe have more limited impact in terms of return on investment and equity. The next category of recommendations is kind of bigger picture changes that the council could consider. These include recommendations like cutting entire programs or streamlining the EDF dramatically. These sorts of recommendations have variable impact in terms of return on investment. They generally promote equity, but are more limited in terms of operational and political feasibility. Finally, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into best practice program upgrades. These recommendations include job creation clawbacks. Currently, the EDF's grant and loan program includes job creation clawbacks in which if a firm doesn't meet its kind of target number for job creation, it has to return funding to the county. And I would one of the recommendations is to kind of consider expanding that to all programs that are focused on expanding workforce opportunities and job creation. Another recommendation here is technical assistance consultations for the programs that are focused on innovation and equity spaces. And a final recommendation I wanted to highlight here today is first source hiring preferences in which firms that receive larger incentives would be required to connect with WorkSource Montgomery and potentially have kind of first look or first preference hiring for certain roles. These recommendations generally have enhanced impact, enhanced equity impact, and the political and operational feasibility trade-offs are actually pretty limited. Research shows that enhanced business services, such as the recommendations included here, have a benefit cost ratio that is much higher than just cash incentives alone. With that, I wanted to thank you for your time and look forward to questions during the Q&A.
Thank you. And now we have some time for questions for these first 4 panelists from council members.
Thank you so much for the excellent presentations. I would like to highlight that you don't only have everybody on the council here present, you also have a couple of directors who are right behind you. And I think this speaks also highly of your work. We had the Chief Smedley here, or Fire Chief, and I see Director Albornoz back in the end. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to start with, I see council members already in the queue, which is great. I'm going to start very quickly. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to start with Emma, just because, Emma, you don't know this, but I've been following your work. And I want to appreciate Balal Ali, who's the staffer for the Economic Development Committee, which I share, and he has said many awesome things about you, and know that the Economic Development Committee has a session in the fall regarding all our grants, and your work is going to be incorporated into that session. After we get the staff report, I want to make sure that you see it, even though you're going to be back in school. I still want to get your input. And I want to say that to you because it is important for all of you to know that every single project that you guys are speaking of, believe me, ideas are going to come out and we're going to use them. And this is just one example. And I want to thank you for all that. I find it very valuable. And then the other one that I wanted to highlight, just to be brief, because all 4 were really exciting. I love the dashboard for the arts. By the way, I have a meeting tonight with the Wheaton Urban District and the Mid-County Advisory Board, and we're going to be discussing the next steps for Wheaton as an arts and district, and how we can increase the boundaries and the coming Wheaton Arts and Culture Center and so forth. And I think your insight is actually very, very timely. So thank you for all that. And I'm going to end there. But I also love Stacy's and Travis' work as well. I'm going to start with Councilmember Sidney Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you to Ms. Dunn and Mr. Anbinder and to all the fellows. You really do a wonderful job. And I'm saying that not knowing what the next group is going to say. So that's called faith. But I have to tell you, your presentations, candidly, are thoughtful, helpful, and impressive. And as the council president already pointed out, we have a couple of department heads here, Chief Smedley and former council member Albornoz. Chief Smedley could have been a council member, but he never ran for office. But anyhow, what did you say?
He's too smart.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I shouldn't have even asked what you said. But anyhow, all of you had something very important to say, but of course, being the chair of public safety, I wanted to touch on Ms. Cabrera and Mr. Henderson. For the fire and rescue service, to me, it's very interesting about what we've done and how we're doing it. In any of your research, did you see something that we should continue to do the next step on, other than what you just listed on your slides?
Yeah, thank you for the question. One, Fire and Rescue does an amazing job already with all
No
of
question.
their programs, right? So of the several programs, I wanted to highlight one. I had the chance to participate in a ride-along. That is the Mobile Integrated Health Program. So that is identifying frequent callers to the 911 emergency communication centers, and it's going to their homes and talking with residents face-to-face about what is your current knowledge about the county and resources that are in the county. And I think this program was a really important one that I had the opportunity to see firsthand. And I think identifying frequent callers and reducing that call load could help everyone.
Thank you. And then I'm going to turn to Mr. Henderson. And first off, thank you for everything that you've done. It's obvious why one of the reasons you're successful is because Grandma's watching you. I mean, and she's raising her thumb behind you. And thank you so much for all of your assistance. But communication is the key, not just for fire and rescue and for public safety, but for everything that we do. And I think that it's very hard to the police department especially have worked very hard to try to get more and more people involved in this occupation. And it's understandable. It's the only occupation that we have. Everybody wears a body-worn camera. And I always often say that no politician would want to wear a body-worn camera every day. There's issues when that happens, but that is what we've done, and I think it's for the safety of the public, and it's for the safety of the officers who are wearing it. People at times will say things about them that are not correct. And this says, let's go back and look. And so that's a big help. But every suggestion that you've had is very important. But public safety is working very hard to increase the work, and I appreciate the fact that you have said we need to reach out into continue to reach out to all these other areas, these other places. But is there a specific, in your research, did you find any place specifically that is doing it better than we are? We're working hard. I mean, we've hired groupings to do that, consultants to help us. But did you find anybody that's doing it better than we are?
First, thank you for the question. I think I mentioned Dallas, and I think analytically and numerically they're doing better. But I think we took a field trip to, I believe it was the police training academy, public safety training facility,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we're able to, for me, I was able to see a lot of the trainings for the police officers are happening there, and we were able to see current cadets in their trainings. And I think the special thing about Montgomery County is that it's so interpersonal and it's so connected that I don't believe another place is doing it like Montgomery County. I think we always have room to grow, and there's always room for improvement. Again, I mentioned before, the senior community I think is out of touch in the sense that they're not able to get the same information that we get from social media. So bridging those kind of gaps, and you mentioned perception. My director, he wasn't able to be here today; he's out of town. But Dale, the first conversation that we had was about the perception of the police, and I think it really stems from the negative and positives that are viewed on in the news and social media. And I think being able to change that perception again, if the police, I know there's current programs for it, but connecting with seniors or even the youth as well, building that from a younger age can develop into something more substantial. So I don't think any place is doing it like Montgomery County, but we definitely have opportunities where we can shine brighter than they are.
Thank you very much. I turn back, Madam Chair.
Great questions. Thank you so much. Next, Councilmember Kate Stewart.
Thank you. I join with my colleagues and say congratulations. Excellent presentations. Emma Jones, thank you. I think you've done the work for the council president here for her session, and but I think that was really helpful, and your charts and everything and the points that you raised. And I just want to say also, as the fellow that I've gotten to spend some time with in different meetings on different topics, it's been great having you here this summer. And Travis, I really appreciated your presentation, how you laid it out and gave us some actionable suggestions and things to look at. I think it was a very, very clear direction and appreciate that. And Emma, that one slide you have really encapsulates some of the issues we do have with evaluations, and I really appreciate that as well. Stacy, I'm going to spend some time on your presentation because this is one that I've spent a good deal of time working on in my time on the council, and really appreciate the work you've done and what Chief Smedley and our fire and rescue services have done. So one, I just appreciate at the beginning the way you laid out the different pieces of legislation and then looked at the different interventions we're doing. One question I also had for you that I've looked at, and I know Councilmember Mink has been looking at as well, is an indication of when fire alarms go off in buildings and what that indicates in terms of the status of a building and whether or not it's a troubled property or needs other things, and the assistance needed in that. Were you able to look at that at all?
So thank you. I know this is an important topic that last year's Summer Fellow focused on, and so my project kind of built on that, on terms of what can we do when fire alarms go off and residents may not be aware of why it's going off. So I kind of took the lens of like education efforts and the education lens of, can I understand why a fire alarm is going on and what can we do to ensure, you know, the education is improved there. But I didn't go into like detailed research on fire alarms.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will double check on those regs on the multiple languages, because that was the bill I worked on and I thought we had put in multiple languages, but I'm going to check out those regs. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Balcom.
Thank you. This is always so interesting, and there are questions that we always have, but we just don't have the time to delve deep into it. So I really appreciate the work that you've done, and also just the professionalism that you go about doing your work. So I appreciate that. Just a couple thoughts. Yes, the arts organizations. As soon as we saw that slide, everybody groaned. And the frustration is that we all believe that arts are very important to our community. But when it comes to budget, we have to make decisions based on data. And so your work is going to be really helpful. Agree with the economic development. We've been talking about those funds for a long time, and we're one step ahead now with your work, so appreciate that. And just briefly, Ms. Cabrera, the educational point, the community capacity is so important. I had the great opportunity to join the fire station in my neighborhood, and we went on a door-to-door fire alarm check, and every single home we went into had a fire alarm, a smoke detector, and every single smoke detector was not working. And so the education of, yes, we have a smoke detector, but it has to be working, it has to be checked, the batteries have to be changed, all of those things, I think is, the county does a great job, but we know that we need to do more and more. And this idea of building the community capacity for how the community can help with that educational component. Chief just walked in the door. I was singing your praises about the door-to-door fire smoke detector checks. And so I just really appreciate your work. And I think that it really kind of, although it was specifically focused on the, what do you call it? The life-saving, yeah, it is, yeah. I lost my words for a minute. Yes. but I think that the concept really does spread to so many public safety issues. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we have Councilmember Don Luque.
Thank you, Madam President. So thank you all. I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said, so I'm just going to focus on a couple of things that I want to, based on all the things you've presented, questions that I have that aren't necessarily for all of you, but that based on your work, carry back to the agencies who are doing the work. So the first thing is with respect to fire and rescue, since I know the Citizens Academy that the Fire and Rescue Service has just started. I know you have another class coming this fall for Citizens Academy and that it's going to be longer in the fall. But to the presentation's point and the need for community emergency preparedness network, is that an opportunity perhaps for people who participate in the Citizens Academy to then become ambassadors of that community emergency preparedness? So something to flag for that. The two other indicators that immediately I jotted down for the arts piece are educational impacts and therapeutic impacts that I would love for us to be able to have some way to quantify or qualify, because those are two things that are also near and dear to me in addition to the economic development piece. And then for the police department, I do say it is heartening that in the last graduation that just happened last Thursday, of the 37 folks who graduated from the police academy, and that includes our municipal departments too, they speak 26 languages. That's amazing. So that was super cool. I think there's room there for emphasizing our volunteer capacity. So the police department does have a large capacity for volunteers to do those types of community outreach and engagement things that you were highlighting the need for more of. And again, that's a great way to empower citizen collaboration and resident collaboration to be a volunteer. And then also for the senior safety workshops, to put a pin in it for the police department to work with the Department of Aging here in the county, as well as our Office of Consumer Protection, on formulating how best to engage and make it multidisciplinary, because it is something that is incredibly important. Our senior residents, both in the fire and rescue context, as well as in the susceptibility to scams and other vulnerabilities. But because we have a great Department of Aging here in Montgomery County, and we have an outstanding Office of Consumer Protection, leverage those to be collaborative. So thank you for that. And I'm going to leave it there, but thank you for your presentation because it was amazing.
Thank you for those comments. Next, we have Councilmember Kristen Mink.
Thank you. As all colleagues have noted, these are always so impressive and so tangibly helpful. So thank you all for taking on these projects, and thank you for really taking a closer look at how we're collecting data and how we're analyzing it, because that is what really helps us to make better decisions about how we spend our time and how we spend the resources that our taxpayers provide us as a county. Stacey Cabrera, your project had such great alignment with Fire Rescue Strategic Plan, and so this is just such helpful timing as we think about how we can capitalize on their goal to take into account opportunities on the prevention side to impact calls for service, and taking into account inequities that exist from community to community. The map on CPR, the graphic on the use of CPR, was so interesting and makes me want to see so much more of the data that you looked at. So I'm looking forward to getting the whole report. I had the pleasure of joining Fire Rescue at an apartment building in our district where they kind of set up shop, and they were just catching residents as they walked by and teaching and taught them CPR. We're working to overcome language barriers with translation tools and build relationships. And that was so great to see. There were teens who were interested in learning about how they could get more involved, and that moment really illustrated so much of what you talked about, but in a data-driven way. So really appreciate that. And I think that the Community Preparedness Ambassador Network makes a lot of sense. And there's some alignment there also with some of the comments by Travis Henderson on your project in terms of the importance of having those relationships and communication with the community and leveraging trusted community members and community organizations to bridge those gaps. So thank you for that as well. Emma Davis, I thought it was so perfect what you said, that we're leaving impact on the table. That is so true. And, I think that we all know arts has many benefits besides just the economic output. But how do we how do we process that data, and how do we use that to inform our decisions is something that is long overdue for us to take into account. And I think that the suggestion to include those regular impact evaluation cycles within the 10-year cultural plan, very timely, makes a lot of sense. And so thank you for your work on that. When you talk to them, actually, if I could ask, when you talk to them about that, what were their thoughts on that?
So when I talked to them about indicators, for example, they are still very much in the proposal process. So a lot of their objectives, they haven't developed indicators for yet, although they did mention, I believe it's objective 6.1, that they are definitely thinking about arts impact, but it's not fully fleshed out yet as far as my conversation went, although it's very much still in the proposal process and taking feedback. So that could change.
I think that your project is going to be helpful to them, I'll say, because they did talk about the importance of making sure that we were framing the cultural plan and what we take from it, exactly like you said, that we're not just talking about economic impact, that we are looking at a lot of other indicators. And so as they move into thinking about the how, I think that your project is very informative. So thank you for taking that on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Travis, as I said before, I especially appreciate the alignment with some of our other objectives that we have and the very clear recommendations and even timeline that you laid out for us. So thank you for your work on that as well. And Emma Jones, I know that we are all very excited for that econ session. I will. This again is so well aligned with priorities that we have as a county and that we have as a council. And so it provides such a tangible opportunity for us to leverage the research you have done with the work that we're already doing so that we can do it better. So you will see this applied, and thank you very much for the time and effort on that, and for the suggestions of not only how we can look at and present and analyze that data, but also how we can leverage it to do better. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Andrew Fritzen.
Thank you. This is always such an amazing way to head into August recess. So just really applaud each of you for all of your work this year in particular, and the presentations so far have been especially applicable to the work that we're doing and the conversations that we're having. That's not always the case. Sometimes they spur a conversation that happens. Sometimes they don't, and it's just interesting and thoughtful. This is particularly applicable. So thank you for that, and to each of you for bringing your talent here. We hope you stay here. So I'll just make the pitch right now, whether it's working for the council, central staff, or in the county, for county government or in some form or fashion. I said that at lunch. I'm going to repeat that here. We want you to stay here. So that's hopefully part of the success of this program. And I'll thank Mr. Ambinder and Ms. Dunn, but I especially want to give a shout out to Marlene Michelson, because this really was her baby, this program, and to see it continuing is exciting for all of us, and I know especially gratifying for her. So just wanted to acknowledge her with that. I have lots of questions and lots of follow-up, but I'm going to refrain from that and save you all who can follow up offline. But I did just have a question for you, Ms. Jones, on the EDF dynamics as we head into some of these conversations. Were there particular programs elsewhere that you found that did some of the strategic and operational work particularly well in other jurisdictions?
Yes, thank you for your question. And the research that I looked at in the academic research, Oregon came up a lot, and specifically their kind of forgivable loan structure kind of came up as a repeating theme of a best practice to look at. But will include more of those kind of examples in my final report. And there's also an OLO report coming out with some more of those kind of best practices around the country. So thank you for your question.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Next, Councilmember Shebra Evans.
Absolutely. So I'll be brief, but I wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate each and every one of you. You've done some work that we will absolutely be able to use. I think you're amazing. So I met with you in early June. When did you all actually start? What date did you June 1st? Okay, so in this short period of time, this work that you have done, oh my goodness, you could sit alongside any one of us and be a council member. And some of you don't even live in our county. So I feel like you played, you put some special attention to what we could do that could benefit the residents here in Montgomery County. So I appreciate that. You've come a long way since we talked. I felt like you were just kind of getting started with what you wanted to do, and to see what you've done. This is amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you. I'll be looking out for all of you to see what you do in the future. Stay in touch.
Thank you for that. Next, Councilmember Will Jowando.
Thank you. I wanted to chime in so you didn't think I wasn't not interested, but I know we have the other panel, but I'll say two things. They're all great. I'm interested in something each of you said, and we'll follow up and read the reports. I have introduced at least two, maybe more, bills that are based on work that fellows did. It's Child Investment Fund, which hadn't passed yet, but it's okay. We're working on it, to create like baby bonds. We had a baby bond presentation, folks remember, years ago. That was done, I think maybe the first year or 2 years ago. And so that bill's actually technically still pending, and the menstrual equity bill, not passed, but we're gonna do something about that too. But the point being, other pilots have formed. I just want you to know how important it is what you're doing, that the ideas are going to be taken to heart. They're gonna make lives better for people in Montgomery County, and we just really appreciate it. So I'm excited to follow up on all of your projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Lorian Sells.
Thank you. I too am always excited to hear from our fellows. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to sit down and have lunch with you all and pick your brain about some of the proposals that you all have put forth. But I do look forward to returning in the fall and doing a deeper dive into some of the projects. I remember under our former county executive, Leggett, we had, he did the Arts and Humanities Ball and was raising funds to supplement what we could provide to the arts sector. And so I'm hoping that we can reinvigorate that effort to support the arts. And as Chair of Health and Human Services, it's, art therapy has become so important, especially now with our young people having so many challenges with mental health. It just is such a incredibly useful outlet that we certainly have not leveraged to the best of our ability. And I'm so grateful that we had students looking at our public safety departments, whether it's creating better pathways for recruitment, better understanding between law enforcement, our community emergency response, and even looking at where lives are being saved and where we need to educate our residents more is very eye-opening. So I'm very excited about the information that you have collected, and looking forward to just diving even deeper into the findings. And, Economic Development Fund, I am so looking forward to the fall and revisiting all of our economic development funds. I love the little table, so I'm hoping that, we can reuse some of the pictures and diagrams to better communicate how we are, creating a return on investment from these programs. These are millions of taxpayer dollars, and, I want to ensure that the resources that we expend on creating a more resilient economy are actually helping everyone in our community benefit. So this was just the start of even deeper conversations. And so I'm just excited. I love hearing, new perspectives and fresh ideas on the work that we, see every day and take for granted. And so we just appreciate your new ideas and look forward to staying in touch. And like Council Member Jawando mentioned, this helps us take a fresh look at these policy proposals and data that you've compiled so that we can hopefully implement some of these ideas moving forward. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for our first panel of fellows. We're going to move on to the second panel, and we cannot wait to see what you bring to the table. Expectations are high. I'm going to turn it back to staff.
Thank you. As folks get assembled here, I'll just preview. We have presentations coming up from Mr. Justin Nixon, Mr. Emmanuel Opoku Boateng, Ms. Sohe Awi, and Ms. Courtney Yockel on a variety of topics, so we're looking forward to hearing from them.
Hi, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Nixon, and I served as a summer fellow here with the County Council Central Staff. And my project examined how Montgomery County Public Schools measures long-term workforce outcomes for career and technical education programs and identify opportunities to strengthen those measurement systems in the county. So just to give a little blurb or kind of a little context on career and technical education programs in Montgomery County, as you all may know, the Blueprint for Maryland's Educational Future focuses a lot on college and career readiness, and CT is a core component of that pillar. And also it's a core component of the county's kind of efforts at kind of reinvigorating workforce development for youth specifically. So I kind of wanted to explore that specifically around how to better measure the outcomes for students. So just to kind of get into a little bit of the current approach and areas for improvement around data collection. So MCPS does a great job at tracking participation, what programs they actually offer to students, and the rate at which students attain industry recognized credentials. However, there's a limited amount of information and ability to measure long-term employment outcomes, which is very important given how much outcome data can improve how we evaluate the effectiveness of programs and how we actually allocate resources. So some of the metrics that, kind of going a little deeper into some of the metrics that currently exist around CT outcomes, and also aggregate information around student performance and outcomes in the state of Maryland. So the Department of College and Career Readiness in MCPS, they track enrollment, program offerings, and array of which students receive credentials, and then also the Maryland Longitudinal Data System, which is more of an aggregate students data system that, kind of looks at traditional markers of student progress and outcomes after they leave high school around college enrollment, what degrees they receive, what labor markets they are part of, and their median quarterly wages earned after high school graduation. But the one thing that was missing from that data set, both in MCPS and also in the Maryland Longitudinal Data System, is employment outcomes for CTU students specifically, which I think was really important to know given how much of a priority that college and career readiness and career and technical education programs are in the state and also in Montgomery County specifically. So in looking at some of the literature on best practices for collecting CT outcomes, consistently pointed to 5 best practices around stronger longitudinal tracking that actually specify CT programs specifically, making sure that there was strong cross-agency coordination and communication around that information, and using that data to continuously improve the programs that are available to students. And one example that I was able to identify was actually Florida, funnily enough. They have implemented a longitudinal data system that actually tracks CTU student credential attainment specifically and tracks that with their wage outcomes. So they're able to identify both at the secondary and post-secondary level the types of jobs they get, and also whether their credential matched with the outcome, their wage outcomes in the labor market that they're a part of. So that was a really interesting case study that I was able to find in Florida that has a really good longitudinal data system for CTE programs. So in interviewing representatives from MCPS's Department of College and Career Readiness, along with Montgomery College, I was able to get some key insights. So I included Montgomery College specifically because many MCPS CTE students actually continue their education and workforce training at Montgomery College. It's kind of an extension of the training that they were able to get during their CTE course of study, and both identified similar challenges that focus around limited long-term outcome data and over-reliance on student surveys that has a lot of outreach challenges and a need for stronger coordination among education and workforce partners in the region, with the common thread being that better long-term employment tracking for students is a shared need. So I was able to look into some kind of racial equity considerations around CTE programs, and a couple of things that I found that were really interesting was that there is a higher rate of Black and Latino students who are receiving industry-recognized credentials in MCPS than some of their peers. But in looking at some of the wage data nationally, irrespective of certification or licensing status, Black and Hispanic Americans earn less on average than their peers. And so a couple of things that I thought was really important for equity was making sure that they were exposed to well-paying growing fields and that there is a wage equity commitment from employers in the region, and also using better outcome data to help ensure equitable outcomes. So some of the recommendations and opportunities for council support, since I am talking to the Montgomery County Council. So based on the literature, of course, and some of the stakeholder interviews I was able to gain, I developed 4 recommendations that focus on improving long-term outcome measurements. So the first, of course, is making sure that we have a strong longitudinal data system that specifically has identifiers for CTE students, making sure that there is strong coordination among education and workforce partners in the region, and making sure that employment outcomes specifically are measured in alignment with credential attainment, and using that outcome data to continuously improve program implementation. And so some of the opportunities for the council to support some of that work is really, I think, the main opportunity for the council, I think, is really encouraging and convening interagency collaboration. So we already kind of look to MCPS to, kind of request information and share some of the progress and some of the data that they already collect regarding the programs. But I think it's very important that we go a step further in making sure that that data is centered a lot around outcomes so that we can understand the effectiveness of CTE programs and be better able to inform budget and oversight decisions in the county. So I thank you for listening to my presentation, and the floor is open to questions at the end.
Can you please turn on your mic? There you go.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the council. My name is Emmanuel Boateng, and I spent this summer as one of your summer fellows working with MC.Dot. Every ride-on trip begins before the bus arrives. It begins on the walk from one's front door to their bus stop. And my project this summer measured that walk, not how close a person is to their bus stop, but how they can actually get to one. And I did that with the data that the county already maintains. Every route was measured on the Rural Pedestrian Network and held to the county's own comfort standards. I traced the actual walking route from every home in the county's 56 equity-focused areas to, with more than 105,000 homes, to the nearest of nearly 3,200 ride-on stops. 2 out of 3 of those homes can reach a stop within a quarter-mile walk, but fewer than 1 in 3 of those homes can reach their bus stops comfortably the whole way. This test is strict on purpose because one missing sidewalk or a difficult crossing and the entire route fails for the resident, because that is how people actually experience a walk. And in real terms, nearly 39,000 homes sit close to a stop that they can't comfortably reach. And this cannot be fixed by walking further, as when you extend the walk a full mile, about 98% of homes can reach some stop, but comfort barely changes or comfort barely moves. The problem here is in distance. It's the work itself and what it asks of residents. So any measure of distance that takes account only distance will fail and will overstate access. Where does the work fail? It fails mostly at crossings, with about 81% of sidewalk distance meeting the county's comfort standard, but only 53% of crossing distance meets the standard. The barriers to comfort are also shared. These routes pass through roughly 2,400 uncomfortable links and crossings, and many sit on the way to more than one stop. So being able to fix one crossing can improve the walk to several stops and improve access for hundreds of homes. About 2,200 homes have no walking route to any stop even within a mile. And the stops themselves also need work. MC.'s December 2025 ADA audit found nearly 1 in 3 active stops sit in its highest priority accessibility category, and that is a $34 million documented need. The findings of my analysis were turned into a working list that the county can act on. With 727 candidate stops, each scored on safety and access need, neighborhood context, and public benefit. And because weights are also public policies, every stop was scored in 3 ways: county alignment, service leaning, and equity leaning. That way, no single formula decides the outcome. The result is a working list of 175 priority stops. 50 of them rank in the top tier under all 3 ratings. Also, 78 of the 175 priority stops also carry a documented accessibility gap as reported in the December 2025 audit. For my recommendations, when I look at the existing county policy, I found that the pieces are already there, and the county is doing all the work to make these improvements happen. There's a comfort standard in the pedestrian master plan. There's also an equity requirement in the RESJ Act. Bus stop audits are also being done under Vision Zero. However, none of them currently looks at the walk to an ordinary ride-on stop. So my recommendations are mostly about extending what the county already does. And my first recommendation is to extend comfort standard to every ride-on stop, as it currently only measures access to major transit stations like MARC, Metro, and Purple Line. My next recommendation is to add transit access to the equity screen. Currently, no screen asks whether residents can walk to their stops. The third recommendation is to select bus stop audits by access, not just crash history, because a crossing can fail whether or not they produce a crash. The next recommendation is to show documented need besides program funding. And lastly, to report stop access in the travel monitoring report, where that which already captures pedestrian comfort. When taking into consideration all the 5 recommendations extend something the county already does. Block by block, they turn stops that are merely nearby into stops that are actually reachable by residents. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Esoe Awi. I'm a Master of Public Health student at the University of Maryland College Park. And for my project, I focused on strategies to increase the primary care workforce in areas of Montgomery County with low medical provider rates, with a focus on Poolesville. So Montgomery County is recognized as one of the healthiest counties in the state of Maryland, but that reality is not experienced equally across all communities. In Poolesville, residents face significant barriers to accessing primary care. The area has approximately 1 primary care provider for every 7,000 residents and limited transportation options. With over 16% of Poolesville residents over the age of 65 and chronic conditions like diabetes affecting residents, the need for consistent access to care cannot be understated. Considering that medical specialty services are about 8 to 14 miles away from Poolesville residents, managing such chronic conditions without reliable transportation is difficult. Through interviews with community stakeholders and review of existing literature, I sought to identify practical recommendations to bring to the Council to consider strengthening healthcare access in this region. There is no single solution to increasing the healthcare workforce shortage, so my recommendations are categorized into 4 pillars. There are a lot of factors that contribute to where a physician will choose to live and work, including the area in which they completed their graduate medical education. Incentives similar to Bill 3921, which provided county-level property tax incentives for public safety personnel, can bring providers to the area. Expanding partnerships with Montgomery College and the University of Maryland Shady Grove, and connecting pre-social work and pre-nursing students to initiatives such as the Mobile Health Clinic could establish a stronger pipeline of future healthcare providers who already have experience serving the up-county region. Lastly, housing affordability affects many professions across the board, so reducing that barrier could make practicing in Poolesville more attractive. Throughout my interviews, transportation consistently emerged as one of the largest barriers to care. Currently, Poolesville is served by one ride-on route that connects residents to the Shady Grove Metro Center, but it does not provide direct access to any of the neighboring healthcare facilities. Older adults and individuals with reliable transportation often face significant challenges in attending their medical appointments. The county should continue to explore flexible transportation options, such as piloting direct connections between Poolesville and neighboring medical care facilities. Also, there is the Metro Access, which has a requirement of a 3/4 mile from the closest bus stop. So in Poolesville, that only benefits a small amount of the population who live within that 3/4 radius. Simply increasing the requirement for a Poolesville area could go a long way in increasing access to reliable transportation. Also, continued investment in the mobile health clinic is also really important. Currently, the clinic visits the Poolesville area 3 times a month between the hours of 9:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m., and these slots fill up quickly. Adding more visitation times and expanding service hours will go a long way in increasing access for residents in the region. Poolesville does not currently hold a MUA/P designation from HRSA, despite experiencing similar challenges to communities that do. The benefits of a designation from HRSA are significant in alleviating certain barriers to care that residents currently face. This is not something the county itself can do. However, by continuing to collect local data, documenting provider shortages, and advocating for policies that better account for communities experiencing hidden healthcare disparities, the county can work towards this designation, which will provide a lot of benefit to the Poolesville region. Increasing healthcare access in Poolesville requires more than just increasing the number of medical providers in the region. It requires focusing and addressing the broader factors that influence where providers choose to practice, but also how residents access care. By focusing on recruiting providers, retaining them through community investment, connecting residents to care through transportation and innovative service delivery options, and advocating for long-term policy change, Montgomery County can take meaningful steps to increase healthcare access in the Up-County and Poolesville region. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, County Council members. My name is Courtney Yackel. I am a Master of Public Health student at the University of Maryland College Park, concentrating in environmental health sciences.
Today I will be talking to you all about the application of road salt by private applicators in the county. Road salt is a de-icing material. It's made predominantly from sodium chloride, and while necessary and effective at maintaining safe road and sidewalk conditions during the winter season, it can exert detrimental effects on freshwater ecosystems, pose concerns to human health, and create costs for consumers. I have several recommendations for the council on how the county can work to reduce the amount of road salt being used by private applicators. And just a quick note, I might not read everything that I put together on the slides due to time constraints, but I do encourage you to read them while I'm speaking. So chronic or high chloride levels, those above 230 milligrams per liter, are toxic to freshwater organisms. And under these conditions, organisms experience osmotic stress, which results in rapid dehydration, organ failure, and death. Chloride ions also mobilize phosphorus and other nutrients in freshwater bodies, which feed phytoplankton. This results in algal blooms that block sunlight penetration, killing underwater plants and contributing to the collapse of food chains and the deprivation of dissolved oxygen. There are 7 watersheds in the county. I utilized publicly available data to assess the health of the county's freshwater bodies and gathered sufficient data for 5 of the county's watersheds. The data you see here is based on mean or average calculations, and most of the data for each watershed spans several years. As you can see, median chloride levels reported during the winter season were significantly higher than that of any other season, and this coincides with when road salt is typically applied. Road salt can also threaten public health. Of greatest concern is that runoff containing road salt can generate elevated sodium levels in municipal drinking water and private on-site wells. This can be concerning for residents on low salt or salt-restricted diets, as well as for individuals with chronic or underlying health conditions like high blood pressure, kidney disease, or cardiovascular disease. Residents are also not required by county, state, or federal law to test their well water, such that they might not be aware of the high concentrations of sodium that they're ingesting. And in 2019, there were reports from families within the county who had tested their well water and found that it contained drastically higher levels of salt than what is recommended and considered safe by the EPA. Transitioning now to some of the consumer costs, road salt exacerbates the formation of potholes through the creation of an artificial freeze-thaw cycle. The county is estimated to spend roughly $381.865 million on its resurfacing residential rural roads project over the next 6 years, which among larger projects includes the refilling of potholes, and 87.4% of this project is funded by government obligation bonds. Among private applicators, these are some of the most common concerns with reducing road salt application, including expenses for purchasing new equipment, pressure from clients to lay down a visible amount of salt, and liability surrounding slip and fall cases. And now transitioning to my recommendations. My first recommendation is to establish a chloride reduction grant and loan program for large equipment upgrades that would incentivize private applicators to apply less salt. With grant money, for example, contractors could purchase liquid brine equipment. Brine is a mixture of water and sodium chloride that can be sprayed on parking lots, roads, and walkways. And because it can be distributed much more evenly and it tends to stick where it's applied, it reduces waste and the amount of granular product that is necessary. My second recommendation would operate like the Montgomery County Commercial Leaf Blower Rebate Program. Contractors would have the option to return old equipment in exchange for a voucher for the purchase of newer machinery that would reduce salt waste from inefficient application. To educate residents on safe salting practices and incentivize their participation, I recommend an amendment to the Code of Montgomery County Regulations, CommCore, specifically as it relates to the water quality protection charge. Under CommCore currently, residents are ineligible for rebates unless they have completed the installation of stormwater best management practices or retrofits. And under the proposed amendment, residents would not be required to install retrofits, but following completion of safe salt training and submission of documentation of their salt usage, they would be granted a small rebate. My final recommendations are directed at the state of Maryland. I recommend that the county advocate for a total maximum daily load for chloride that would set a limit on the amount of chloride that can enter the Patuxent and Potomac rivers. Additionally, limited liability protection would help incentivize and encourage applicators to put down less salt. New Hampshire passed legislation that grants limited liability protection to private contractors upon completion of safe salt training, and it's been very successful in reducing salt applications and chloride contamination. So thank you.
Thank you, and now we'll have time to ask questions of the second panel.
Excellent presentations, and honestly, I'm blown away with the different themes. All of them have been extremely useful. And I just want to say quickly, Mr. Nixon, CTE, we got to follow up. You have great ideas over there. Mr. Manuel Opoku Ponte, did I say that right? Accessibility gap, I was thinking of doing more work personally on issues with people with disabilities and how they get to bus stops. So this was awesome for me. I'm going to be using your work. And then Esoe Owi, yeah. I was recently in App County in Poolesville, which I forgot to tell you. I was in your district. There you go. You heard? I behaved. I did WUNCO, which is a nonprofit over there that focuses on access to healthcare, gave me a tour, and honestly, they took me to places that I have never been. If they don't give me that ride to see the farms, but not just like the beautiful farms, but the homes where workers live, that was very impactful. And I think we need to keep talking about the story and the need of having more access to healthcare services, but also transportation access, as you highlighted. So I love that. So thank you for your work. And last but definitely not least, I still have nightmares with all that, with a huge storm that we just had. And you speaking on the science, not just the fact that, because every time we talk about the storm and snow, it's about people's inconvenience. Oh, I can't go outside. Oh, I need to shovel the snow. But we don't talk about the health issues as you did in such an amazing way. And I'm sure there are quite a few things that we need to follow up, especially in terms of educating the population on how much salt they should be using. So thank you for your work. With that, I'm going to turn it to colleagues. I'm going to start with Council Member Dawn Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to take you kind of out of order from how you presented, but actually it was lovely that you two are sitting next to each other, because the transportation piece and the healthcare access piece are inherently intertwined. And so I want to echo what the Council President just said regarding Poolesville and WUMCO's work, and I represent the other chunk of our agricultural reserve, but truly access is incredibly uneven in these more rural areas, and the ability to have even like we do have like in Olney, in part of my district, an organization that provides rides for seniors. It's a nonprofit, but that doesn't go all over the Ag Reserve. It has a limited service area. So finding ways to tie that in, and also recognizing that there are other sort of fragilities for those patients that need to be addressed. So thank you for that. Emmanuel, I wanted to know whether at any point in your research you assessed how many miles of roadway adjacent to or within a mile of existing ride-on service stops have no sidewalks.
I did not assess that, but that would be a great input into my work.
Thank you. Just because I know that is particularly an issue in my district and in Councilmember Balcom's district, and again relates to the other presentation about healthcare and also work access, but those are ongoing concerns. I too, Courtney, we all get a little twitchy when anybody talks about snow. And we're going to feel that way for a long time. But one of the things that kept coming up in the Snowcrete episode there, I said it out loud, was that people would contact us not understanding that brine had been applied because they didn't see it. And so I want to thank you for elevating that brine works. And wondered whether, and thank you for highlighting the roadway damage piece too, that can be occasioned by excessive salt use. It's no mystery. We have a lot of roads within the county that need a lot of repair. But whether there was any significant difference in what you assessed in terms of the roadway damage where brine is required in Montgomery County versus those roadways where it is not.
That's a great question. I did look into road conditions across the county. And kind of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, this doesn't answer your question, but the Montgomery County Department of Transportation does give ranking to the road conditions. So I did look into that a little bit, but I did not consider brine application, but that would be interesting.
Thank you. I think, and actually just even in my own district, I think that the roads that I know of that require brine are state roads, but again, and you did emphasize that there is the difference between we have state salt management, we have our local salt management, but all of it affects all of the roadways and all of the environment. So thank you for your work. That's excellent. And then last but not least, Justin, I know you went first. So thank you for your work. CTE and its outcomes and its availability are two significant priorities of mine. One question I had was, did you look at the demand for the CTE programs within MCPS versus the number of spots available for the programs available within the K-12 environment in MCPS?
So that was a component of my research. It wasn't necessarily the key priority of my kind of focus area in the research, but they do offer 51 programs. They kind of dwindled, in conversation, they have dwindled it down for the upcoming school year to 38. Now, I think having outcome data will help in understanding the return on investments for specific programs and how well they're performing in propelling students into into certain careers. So I think that was a big component of why I wanted to explore the specific policy area, was because I want to understand like what pathways, what programs that are offered actually help in getting students into the fields that they're studying in, and whether or not there needs to be some adjustments, whether there might need to be, maybe we cut certain programs that aren't necessarily as effective, or if they might need additional support that they aren't already getting. But they do offer a lot of programs. I didn't necessarily get a chance to look into specific demand, although there is a report from one of our great staff members and central staff on like a more comprehensive collection of the data on which programs specifically students are in. But I didn't get a chance to look into that specific component.
Okay, and then my other question for you was, you mentioned that there were some data gaps in what you were able to get from the MLDS. And I want to be completely candid, because they were my client for a very long number of years, like from the time that agency was founded until the time I came here. But did you have the opportunity to look at the data dictionary and determine what things were missing? Because they do have a process for how you get missing information, and wanted to know if you, in terms of apprenticeship program data that they do have, what was missing from that, what was missing from their existing CTE collection that would help have answered the questions you were looking for better.
Sure. So the information that was most readily broadcasted was the ones around college enrollment, with like what type of, like, whether it's a 4-year or 2-year institution that the students are enrolling in, the wage sector that they're like a part of, more traditional hallmarks of what we consider student performance. I was not able to readily find information as it pertains to CTE students in Montgomery County specifically. Now, if there is a way to get a public information request on that specific data, then there might be information, but it's not publicly broadcasted in a specific way that I was able to identify. And then also in a report from central staff on CTE programs, they mentioned that they weren't able to identify information as it pertains to student employment outcomes. Now, if there's data that I wasn't able to find specifically that, you know, is out there that wasn't publicly accessible for me, then maybe that is something I could look into. But I wasn't able to see it very clearly broadcasted on their dashboard.
Right. So just so you know, because you all are researchers, and this is a great thing, you can that data is not broadcast, as you said, because the data in the system is available at the unit record level, as in like you are a code number in there, and then it's all matched with everything of you in it. You can become an external researcher with the entity and then have that to develop your own research studies, decide the statistical methods you want to apply to it, and gain that access. But that is not publicly available in that way. They do produce reports and things like that, but and also you can let their governing board know, because if there's something where you're like, hey, we should have a better report on this, you should take that up, then they can do that work and put that up there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Kate Stewart.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for these presentations again. And I do want to also thank the central staff for all their work. And, you know, I think this is our 4th year as this council, having the fellows come and while each year just keeps getting better and better, I have to say, your presentations and what we can take away from them. Courtney, thank you so much. I was, having a lot of Sligo Creek and Rock Creek in my district. I was really, those charts were very helpful. So I appreciate that. Isohi, I've done Poolsville. I think they're very good about getting all of us, even other district council members there. And I appreciate your very specific recommendations and how you looked at other things that we were doing in the county, like the property tax credits, to see how we can expand and recruit folks. Emmanuel, I'm going to leave you actually for last. I have a question for you. And Justin, I really appreciated especially the racial equity analysis you did, and looking at not just who's in the programs, but then the jobs they get and the incomes that they're receiving. And I think that's incredibly important information for us as we're tracking this and thinking about how we do that. And it made me think, I was actually just listening to NPR this morning, and they just did, or it was the Daily or one of those things, thinking about how we're tracking the impact of AI and the data that we're actually collecting, and how we're not doing such a great job tracking technology jobs and all of this and the impact. And so the work you just did, I think, is really critical in how we understand who's going into these fields and how we make sure they have the support and are getting the salaries they should receive. Emmanuel, terrific job. I may steal some of it as well. I loved how you talked. Thank you. I love how you talked about it begins on the walk. And I think that's really important to think about. And so I just loved how you framed that. One question I had for you is, in your analysis, and I also recognize some of those intersections. I think a couple are in D4. But I was curious, were you able to look at what are county roads versus state highway and do that type of analysis on, what's worse?
Well, I didn't do a comparison between county, state, and county roads and state roads. However, there's that overlap. One of my recommendations, though, was to, which is in the report, was to kind of have the right coordination to make sure that these fixes are being done in a way that state and county are able to communicate effectively and work together effectively to make sure that there aren't any missing links, because that could be one reason why there are missing links in those areas. I think it would be very interesting to also look at where those missing links are actually happening the most. I do know, I do have a list of roads and intersections where they happen, and it would be interesting to actually look at it from that point of view and then see whether it's actually happening mostly either in places where they intersect with county roads intersect with state roads, and that would be an interesting finding to look at.
I think that'd be great. We might have to have you come back for a Environment and Transportation Committee session. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Excellent presentations.
Thank you. Next, we have Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom.
Thank you. With the last panel, we wondered how we could you could top it, but I think you've all done such great work. So the CTE stuff I think is so important, and it will continue to become more and more important as society takes a different look at education and who is successful in their life and who is successful in their careers. And so I see a change, a big change on the horizon with that. And I know it's been really difficult for MCPS and Montgomery College to track success and employment once an individual leaves the environment. And so I was surprised that that information's not included in the Maryland National, the longitudinal data information. And so I think that's something that we can look into. And so that's critical, and thank you so much for looking at that. When we look at the ride-on and walkability, it made me think of Councilmember Glass in his political origin story about seeing the sidewalks on his way to the metro, and I always think of you, Evan, when I see those sidewalks, and thank you for your work on that. But in combined also, you know, it was very interesting to talk about Poolesville, the transportation, and the transit at the same time. And Poolesville is my district. Thank you so much for your care in looking at this this issue. And it's kind of a double whammy, because not only do we not have a lot of transit options in Poolesville, so people don't have easy access to transit, but when you look at the metro access and the requirement of somebody being within 3/4 of a mile of a transit stop, it really is a double whammy. So areas that are rich in transit, not only do they have the transit options, but they can also have access to metro access. It's something that we've looked at for many years now, and they simply haven't budged, because if you open it up for one area, then we've got the entire ag and rural areas, and but it's so critical and so important. So thank you for that work on that. So yeah, and Courtney, thank you for your work. I think it's something that we have to think about every year, and we were just saying that there's no incentive for companies to use less salt. And I think the liability issue, I never thought about that, but you know, that liability issue, I'm sure that they want to make sure the contractors, because most of the salt used in the county, that even the salt we use is contractors, and the contractors aren't going to hold themselves out as liable. So I think that's just such an important piece that I hadn't thought about. So great job, everyone.
Excellent. Next, Councilmember Kristen Mink.
Thank you. Thank you all for these excellent presentations. My staff is excitedly texting about how tangibly useful these all are, so this is great. Justin, I wanted to thank you for including the racial equity considerations. That is so important. We can't, it really shows that this is a multifaceted approach that we need to address these issues, or we're not going to get at the considerations that you raised. We can't just focus on access to the CTE programs. We can't just focus on the employment outcomes. We also have to address the pay disparities and all the disparities that are factoring in along the way. And I know colleagues are subtly signing you up for more continued research to dive further into this, and I would second that. Really, really valuable and very much aligned with work that we're doing currently, so thank you for that. Emmanuel, I was looking to see, like, do I recognize those stops, because this absolutely is an issue in my district as well, and it comes up all the time. And so your highlighting of ways that we can systematically incorporate this issue into the analyses that are already being done is so helpful, and I would anticipate seeing movement and action because of this. So thank you for that as well. I was also really interested in the healthcare access for Poolesville, because there are inequities in access in District 5 as well, but the particular barriers are so different. And so looking at strategies for mitigating those or dealing with those access issues in Poolsville was also really interesting to me. And I was interested in the idea that there might be pathways to getting additional funding from state and federal sources. We love that here, so thank you for highlighting that as well. And on the SALT applications, obviously we all get constant complaints about this all of the time. And then, as you highlighted, if residents don't see the SALT, we also get complaints about that. I really liked the graph that you had on showing the water quality impacts and how it changes from season to season. That was new to me. I'm not a scientist, but I would have, as a layman, predicted the opposite, that as in the summer we have evaporation and that's going to increase the concentration of salt. And so showing that huge disparity in the winter, that really does seem to indicate some potential causal impacts as strongly implied here. And in addition to highlighting the impacts on the environment and on health, I wanted to commend your political acuity in including our current road resurfacing expenditures and the implied incentive that by making headway on this issue, we could reduce our road resurfacing costs as well. And I wanted to ask if you had looked at any jurisdictions that have made a transition or an improvement here to best practices, and if so, if there was anything that you observed there in terms of how they did that and the suggestions that you raised that you've seen applied elsewhere.
Yeah, as I mentioned, New Hampshire, they focused on limited liability protection. That's their big thing. Minnesota and Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, those are two, the state of Minnesota and I would say the city of Madison have done a lot, mostly because they receive a lot more snow than we have. But I think what they're doing, as I mentioned, one of my recommendations for grant and loan reduction programs came from Minnesota and Madison. They have found that those can help to incentivize contractors to reduce their salt use. I think those kind of were the top few that kept coming up. There's definitely a lot of research that's out there. It's definitely a very complex issue. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Lori Sells.
Thank you to all of our fellows. Again, very impressive presentations. I will just start from the top. Mr. Nixon, we, from my first initiative with working with our youth to start the Youth Advisory Council and knowing that people of color on average make less, Black women, Latino women, we have, the Pay Equity Act that we champion every year. And so regardless of what discipline, our students pursue after college, it's hard to find equitable employment in any field. And the disparities widen as, women and men age, given demographic information. So I am very curious about this technology that is conducting the longitudinal study in Florida. I'm very surprised that Florida has, any sort of longitudinal studies on outcomes. So I'm very curious to see what that information entails, and have been talking with the county executive about the CTE programs. My daughter did the, I think it was the medical professional program. She became a CNA before she graduated from MCPS, and she actually got the HRSA scholarship for nursing recently. So I'll be over to my TERP students next. So I'm very curious to see how we can look at, longitudinal outcomes, because we are the third largest biotech corridor in the region, and we have an aging population in the county, and we do not have enough workers to support that demographic. And so this is very interesting data, and I'm meeting with our superintendent soon. And so I would love to follow up and see what technology you found and see how we can replicate or bring that technology here to start looking at how our, career and technology counseling is actually impacting the students that want to stay here and actually work here, and the outcomes, because Montgomery County is so expensive to live, and you need a good paying job to actually thrive here. So thank you for your research. I thought it was very thorough, and look forward to following up to discuss more. And Mr. Emmanuel, and that's Opoku Boateng. Okay, I remember Boateng because I feel like there's a designer of the name Boateng. We'll look that up. There is, right? Okay, yeah, I know my fashions. Okay, so the ride on, I was very surprised to see that there were so many stops that were not included in some of the studies and surveys that we conduct. And just looking at the sidewalk, both of those pictures were from Montgomery County sidewalks. Wow. It's very disappointing. I was texting Director Conklin, are you tuning into this report from our fellows? So that's a very interesting take, that we take it for granted, the people who, can walk to the bus station and walk to get around our community. And, part of my SMART agenda is all about multimodal transportation, ensuring that our streets and our roadways are equitable for people of all modalities. And so I think your research is very interesting, and look forward to seeing how we can, make infrastructure improvements to support all of our residents, and, making our roadways safer for pedestrians. And so we got to ask more questions if we want better outcomes, and just tracking the safety of our sidewalks. We don't think about it when you're in the cars. And so very interesting now that, we're absorbing the cost of Ride On, and it's free. We want more people to ride and enjoy it. And so we want to make sure people can access it safely. So thank you for your research as well. And now to my TERP students. I actually worked at HRSA. I was at the call center to talk with students who wanted to apply for the loan forgiveness so that they could work in the rural hospitals. And so I'm so glad that you focused on Poolsville. We advocated for that mobile health clinic to get there. They don't have a grocery store. They don't have, as you mentioned, the urgent health care center or a doctor. I think they lost their only doctor a few years ago. And so this is so important to ensure that they have the infrastructure that they need. And again, transportation, we've tried to advocate for transportation for workers to get to job sites. But just thinking about the infrastructure necessary for health workers to actually serve the community and to serve, as Council President mentioned, the workers that are there and that have trouble getting to a doctor for pre and postnatal care. And so the former public health director actually conducted a zip code data study. And I don't know if you had access to that study. It was probably 10 years ago.
Is that the one that broke it down by primary care service areas?
I believe so. It was by zip code, and I believe it was either Poolsville or Gaithersburg.
Yeah, it
was the lowest.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was Germantown, Gaithersburg, and Poolsville, and then it broke it down.
Yes, yes, good. Now, the MUAP, the medically underserved area population designation, is that something we would have to apply for?
Yes. So this is by HRSA, and it's broken down by state. So each state has to apply for it. For the state of Maryland, there's the Primary Care Office, which is in the Maryland Department of Health, and that's the agency that applies for that designation on behalf of the state. So HRSA has 4 criteria that they use to designate like who gets this designation. Montgomery County specifically has 2 regions that are currently MUA/P. It's Aspen Hill and then Tacoma Park. I don't know how they have the designation. I don't really know how HRSA weighs it, but it has to do with maternity, what's the word? Children who are born, prenatal care, something like that. But then also poverty rate, and then medical provider rates. So I think this is something that would be great for the county to work towards, because having that designation means that federally qualified health centers can be built there, and they get federal funding. So this is not funding that the county would have to, cough up.
Very good. Thank you so much. We're looking ahead for the fall and what our focus areas will be. So this will hopefully be incorporated. I know my fave clerk, Sarah's listening. We just sent over some of the topics, so I'll make sure we augment that agenda. And last but certainly not least, environmental. I actually spoke at the DMV Winter Salt Week this year at the end of January at the Isaac Walton League. And so I'm just glad that we are continuing to focus on this. One of my good friends, Carl, that was on the Muddy Branch Alliance board with me, used to be our salt watcher and used to call me every time he saw a picture of a mound of salt on the highway. And we know that if it gets in the drinking water, when I worked at the FDA, we would hear about spikes in, elevated hypertension, and not knowing that it's because of elevated salt in our water sources. And so it's very important that if you see something, you say something, you see, mounds of salt, it's not supposed to be there. You're supposed to use it sparingly. And we've tried to do lots of campaigns to raise awareness about the importance of, just being mindful of the salt and how it impacts other areas. And so looking forward to discussing this more. I know we had a horrible winter season and not sure what this winter season has in store for us. And so I look forward to talking with our Department of Transportation about how we are monitoring and ensuring that our salt is not used in a way that further impacts our environment. And it's just wasteful, it's expensive. So yes, all good work. So proud of our young people. You make me feel so optimistic and hopeful about our future. It's great to have public policy thinkers ready to, take the lead on making a difference in our community, and hope Montgomery County is on your radar to work, and look forward to staying in touch once again. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Sarah Evans.
I'll be brief. So you all have come before us today. You're either in undergraduate or you are working on your graduate degree. And so what I'm going to say is a compliment. They're all undergraduate? Are you all graduate? Oh, I'm sorry. You're all graduate. So, okay, but you're still in school. So if I had my eyes closed, if my eyes were closed, I would think that we were right now in a work session, a council work session. We're asking you questions like you're the experts that you are. So take it as a compliment that we're drilling you with information that you might not have had time to dig into, but in a short period of time, you've done a phenomenal job, like each and every one of you. And Courtney has made me interested in SALT in the way that I hadn't thought about. But guess what? It's a topic that it comes up a lot during the winter season. And so I appreciate the detail that you went into in your presentation. And so I'm very visual. So we don't have a copy of your presentations. I hope we get them later. But I did see, this is silly of me to say, but I saw in your, in the one visual that you had, was the fish dead in the picture? Right. You were just attention to detail. I was pointing that out. And then, my colleague mentioned about the visit, Council President Fanny Gonzalez mentioned about the WUMCO tour. I took that as well. So I appreciate you highlighting the time in which the transportation comes between 9 and 3, because on my tour, I thought it was interesting that the comment that was made is, you know what, people can't determine when they get sick. They don't decide, I'm gonna get sick in the morning, I'm gonna get sick in the afternoon, but the whole point was to say transportation is not available, nor is it accessible to the residents at the times that they might actually need it. So thank you for highlighting that. And then when we talk about the ride-on, that presentation, I mean, you caught my attention for a variety of reasons. It's something that's needed. I thought your approach to the work is something that it will make me think about it in a different way, and particularly because you know, just different things have happened around pedestrian safety here recently that's really just making us all hyper focused on what we could do and what we should do differently. And then Justin, I've been watching you, your body language changed a little bit, but just know your presentation was so great, was so good. I appreciate you because as a former school board member, you made me think about how we could have done a better job at really thinking about the employment outcomes and in your percentages that you listed out. I mean, that is exactly how it is. More students go into the CTE and very few get that credentialing. And so we thought that by helping to provide and pay for that for students, that could make a difference. But there's still more work that we can do. And I think the question that you raised could really lead more into how we get people to go into CTE and then to get them to stay. And then as you talked about, taking a deeper dive as to if they're not staying as long, why not? And then what we could do differently on the front end. So so please forgive me. I was, you know, we talked, and I don't know why I thought undergrad, but I did know that many of you did, and that you were in graduate school. So thank you for correcting me on that. But once again, I will say you all could sit here alongside of me, and I would feel very confident in whatever work you did and would share. And just know, like, this work will precede you all for quite some time because it's really good, and all of it is relevant to what we're doing here on the council. So I just wanted to state that. I just want to say thank you. And I'm so glad I got a chance to meet you all. And I'm glad you're able to do this work and then present it, because this is not easy. You did a great job. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much to each one of you, two amazing panels, and I'm sure that we're going to be staying in touch. You know how to find us. And thank you again to Central staff. I know maybe if you can resend the presentations, that'll be great. And then we can just follow up with each one of you for those questions. With that, colleagues, this is our last session before the summer break. I'm sure that we're going to be seeing each other very, very often. Very often. There's so many meetings and events from now all the way to September 15. So it's not like we're getting rid of us. We're still in touch. Thank you for your work and your time. Please be safe, and I'll see you back in this room on September 15. And we are adjourned. Thank you.